Chapter 341, The Wrath of the Righteous. Just leave me, Leah pleaded. It is me that they are after. No, Matthew replied as he held her hand firmly. You are my wife. How can I possibly let anyone take you from me? The two were currently hiding inside a small house in order to lose their pursuers. An hour ago, they used a teleportation gate that would connect them to the town called Westwind. This town was still many miles away from Lant, but this was as far as the teleportation gate could take them. Earlier, they noticed several black-robed men following behind them, just before they entered the teleportation gate. The two didn't pay them attention because they were the special forces of the Hellan Kingdom. At least, that was what Prince Lionel told everyone in the conference room. Matthew thought that they were just going to inspect the other towns to see how the survivors were doing. It never crossed his mind that those same men would try to snatch his wife away from him, after arriving at Westwind. An intense battle ensued and the two were immediately pushed back. Not only did their enemies have the advantage in numbers, they were also quite strong. The majority of the people among the black-robed men were in the platinum ranks, but 4 of them were in the mithril ranks. A/N, platinum ranks are equivalent to Class B beasts, while mithril ranks are equivalent to Class A beasts. Matthew and Leah were only at the middle stages of the platinum rank, so they were easily overpowered by their enemies. During the battle, the two noticed that the black-robed men were just focusing their attacks on Matthew and ignoring Leah. In order to protect her lover, Leah decided to take a gamble and block a fatal attack that was meant for Matthew. The black-robed man hastily pulled back his attack, but Leah was still injured in the process. Fortunately, she only received minor injuries because she was wearing special armor under her clothes. In a desperate attempt to escape from their attackers, Leah used the same skill she had used during the dungeon outbreak to escape from the Lamias. She and Matthew appeared inside a public bathhouse because Leah's ability allowed her to teleport to nearby places with bodies of water. Matthew carried his exhausted lover out of the bathhouse and hid inside the nearest house in the vicinity. Fortunately, the house was empty, so the two didn't have to worry about having strangers get hurt because of them. Just why are they doing this? Matthew thought. He tried to think of a reason for why the special forces of the kingdom hunted them down as if they were escaped criminals. After pondering for a while, Matthew still couldn't think of any reason why the black-robed men wanted to capture Leah. It was at that moment when a possibility appeared inside his head. Although it was absurd, it was the only thing that Matthew could think of. Could it be the prince? Matthew gritted his teeth in anger. Although he didn't want to believe it, and wanted to toss this idea aside, his instincts were telling him that he was spot on. Bastard. Matthew cursed the crown prince who acted like a benevolent ruler in front of them, but was secretly planning something vile behind their backs. Matthew looked at his beautiful wife who was sleeping in his embrace and held her tighter. He wouldn't allow anyone, not even a prince, a king, or an emperor, to touch his wife. While he was thinking of a way to escape from their predicament, a gaseous substance entered the sole window of the room. Matthew caught a whiff of it and was immediately alarmed. It was a gas that could paralyze a person if they were to inhale it for an extended period. He had learned about this gas during a laboratory lesson inside the Royal Academy and was very familiar with it. He channeled his magical energy into his leg and foot before kicking the wall beside him. A big hole appeared soon after, and he jumped out of the house without looking back. Leah woke up at that exact moment and was disoriented by what was happening around her. Matthew didn't have time to explain as he channeled his magical energy into his feet to run as fast as he could from their pursuers. Just as they were about to reach the gate of the town, several black-robed men appeared before them. Stop running, one of the black-robed men said in a teasing manner. If you cooperate, you will not get hurt. Why are you doing this? Matthew asked. Why are you targeting us? You don't need to know, the black-robed man answered. Your only choice is to obediently cooperate, or we will beat you up until you cooperate. I'm sure that the young missy in your arms doesn't want you to get hurt. Leah bit her lip as she stared at Matthew, then turned to the black-robed man who seemed to be the leader of the group that was tasked to catch them. If I go with you, will you let him go? Leah asked. Oh, the black-robed man grinned. Very well. Come with us obediently and we will let him go unharmed. No. Matthew rejected Leah's proposal. I will not leave you with these scums. The black-robed man chuckled, but he didn't do anything else. He had no intention of letting Matthew go because the prince wanted him to be brought back as well. The only reason he agreed to Leah's proposal was to prevent the girl from getting hurt further. Once she is in their hands, they would immediately capture the boy and bring the two of them to the crown prince's chambers in the capital of Gladiolus. Matthew, this is the only way. I don't want you to get hurt, Leah looked at her lover pleadingly. Please, just go. Never. I'd rather die. Matthew was adamant. Clearly, he had no intention of letting Leah go alone. I'll count to 3, the black-robed man said with a smile. If the young lady doesn't turn herself in, then we will have no choice but to do it the hard way. Matthew glared at the man as he held Leah close to his chest. He channeled his magic powers around his body to create mage armor. Clearly, he planned to fight to the death to protect his wife. Leah knew that Matthew had made up his mind, so she decided to respect his decision. Although she couldn't move right now due to exhaustion, she still had enough magic power to shoot a few spells to protect the young man she loved the most. The black-robed man narrowed his eyes and began counting. 1, 2, 3. Time's up. The leader of the group made a gesture and the encirclement closed in on the two lovers. Get them, but do your best not to damage the girl. Yes. Ever since the continental spell was activated, thick grey clouds covered the continent, preventing the light of the sun from coming in. Not only that, a powerful barrier enclosed the entire southern continent. This move was done to prevent any outside influences from reaching the southern continent and disrupting the organization's plan for a one-sided conquest. Of course, this barrier also extended up to the sea. The fleets of the Creator Empire and the Elves were already within the territorial waters of the southern continent, since they had anticipated that something like this to happen. They used powerful artifacts to allow their ships to pass through the barrier while it was still not fully formed. Aside from the Elven fleet and the Creator army, no other forces would be able to enter the southern lands unless they used extraordinary means to do so. The moment the continental spell was activated, the southern continent had been closed off from the rest of the world. Suddenly, the sky darkened as thunder rumbled in the heavens. The black-robed men paused for a bit before continuing their mission. Although the sudden change in the weather caught them by surprise, they didn't think much of it. Just as they were about to close in on the two teenagers, several lightning bolts descended from the heavens and struck all the black-robed men. Only the leader of the group was able to dodge in time and escape getting seriously injured. Not bad. A teasing voice praised the leader of the black-robed men. Matthew's and Leah's eyes widened in shock as they stared at the young man that was standing in front of them. He had his back turned on them, but his blazing red hair and his voice had already given away his identity. Who are you? The black-robed man asked as he raised the weapon in his hand. The red-headed boy smirked as he summoned a wooden staff into his hand. Just a shepherd, William answered. Now, I will count up to 3. If you haven't knelt down and apologized to my big brother and big sister by the time I'm done counting, then I will have no choice but to do it the hard way. Thunder rumbled in the heavens, and lightning snaked down from the sky. Sparks streaked out of William's eyes as an evil smile spread across his handsome face. 1. 2. Wait. 3. Please. Have mercy. William chuckled and pointed at his face. Tell me, does this look like the face of mercy to you? Before the man could even give out a reply, a flash of bright light streaked across the sky followed by a roar of thunder. William had no intention of showing any mercy to those who tried to hurt the people that were important to him. Soon a blood-curdling scream reverberated in the town of Westwind. This served as the prelude to the war that would be written in the history books. A war which would still be talked about for thousands of years in the future. A war that many historians would fondly refer to as the Wrath of the Righteous. Chapter 342, Let's return to Lant first. So, are you ready to spill the beans now? William asked with an evil smile plastered on his face. KZZZZT. Tendrils of lightning snaked across William's hands as if they had a life of their own. The leader of the black-robed men, Lewis, shuddered as he looked at the devilish smile of the young man in front of him. He could feel that he was only just a hair's breadth away from being turned into a charred corpse. I'll talk, Lewis answered hurriedly. I'll tell you everything. William nodded and made a gesture for Lewis to start talking. The right hand of Callum told William that they were sent by the Crown Prince to capture Leah and bring her to his chambers tonight. They were also ordered to beat up Matthew if he resisted and drag him back as well. When Matthew and Leah heard Lewis' confession, their expressions immediately became grim. Matthew already had a hunch that it was the prince that sent the black-robed men after them, and it made him want to rip the bastard prince into pieces. Leah, on the other hand, was in disbelief, but Matthew's reactions told her that what she heard was indeed the truth. After this realization, she felt disgusted with the crown prince and buried her head into her lover's chest. I swear, everything I told you is the truth. Please, let me go. Lewis begged. I promise that I won't tell the prince anything. I'll just mention that our targets successfully escaped. Lewis swallowed his pride and begged. He made an oath that if he managed to escape with his life, he would definitely tell this incident to their leader, Connor, and beg him to take vengeance for him. He was confident that, with the members of the organization that were scattered across the southern continent, the half-elf would have nowhere to hide. Okay, you may go. William waved his hand in a casual manner. Don't let me see your face again. Lewis bowed repeatedly, while sneering inside his heart. He then walked away and headed towards the teleportation gate, which would bring him back to the capital of the Hellan Kingdom where the Crown Prince was waiting for him. However, he had only managed to walk 20 steps before his feet stopped moving. Blood flowed out from the corner of his lips as he collapsed on the ground, on the verge of dying. He forced himself to turn his head to look behind him, only to see the red-headed boy looking at him as if he was looking at a dead person. Soon, Lewis' eyes clouded over because his heart had ruptured inside his chest. William had planted a strand of lightning deep within Lewis' heart and detonated it like a miniature bomb. The half-elf had no intention of letting him go in the first place, because he had already dealt with a few people similar to Lewis. He knew that these people were better off dead because if they were left alive, they would make others suffer simply by existing. Well then, how about you two fine gentlemen tell me everything about your organization? William glanced at the 2 surviving men from the organization who were playing dead on the ground. Of course, if you love playing dead, I will be more than happy to send both of you to the afterlife. We will tell you everything. Spare us. We're just following orders. William snorted as he summoned a whip made out of water, and used it to tie up the 2 men to prevent them from escaping. After making sure that they were properly tied up, William smiled and looked at his big brother and big sister, who were looking back at him with grateful expressions. Suddenly, a boy materialized out of thin air and stood beside William. He glared at the half-elf before pinching his waist. You just regained consciousness 2 days ago and you're already pushing yourself. Ian reprimanded. What was that part about taking it easy for the time being? Didn't you say that you wouldn't overexert yourself? What if your spiritual world collapses again? What are you going to do then, hey? William's intimidating presence immediately disappeared as he tried to pacify Ian, who was about to smack him to oblivion. It was an emergency. Besides, you merged with me so my spiritual world is safe, William replied as he grabbed Ian's wrist. He then used his other hand to touch his forehead and spoke in a monotone voice, oh no. I'm feeling dizzy. William's body wobbled dangerously and was about to fall down when Ian caught him. The brown-haired boy looked at William anxiously as he supported the half-elf's body. Of course, William was just acting to stop Ian from nagging at him. Matthew and Leah looked at this scene with complicated expressions. Matthew looked confused, while Leah was looking at the two in amusement. When Ian noticed that Matthew and Leah were looking at them in a weird manner, he hurriedly let go of William, making the half-elf fall on the ground with a thud. Head Prefect Matthew, Vice Prefect Leah, it's good to see that both of you are safe, Ian said as he ignored the fallen boy near his feet. He even hurriedly kicked William's bum, which made the latter yelp in pain, in order to vent out his frustration for being seen in a weird manner by others. Matthew cleared his throat as he pretended not to see his cousin being mistreated by the handsome brown-haired boy in front of him. If I remember correctly, you are one of the officers in the first-year magic division, Matthew replied as he cleared his throat. Are you Ian, or Isaac? I am Ian. Sir Matthew, can you please, tell me, what happened to my young master and my twin brother? Ian inquired. He was very worried about Estes and Isaac's safety because the last time he saw them was before they left for the war. Your young master and your twin brother are safe, Matthew replied. We parted a few hours ago and if I remembered correctly, they were planning to return to the capital. Est seemed to be worried about his mother's safety, so he decided to see her condition as soon as possible. Your twin went along with him. They should be in the capital by now. Ian breathed a sigh of relief after hearing that Est and Ian were safe and had survived the war against the army of the Aenashian dynasty. A loud shriek resounded in the sky as Dave and his partner, Lionheart, descended from the sky while pulling a flying carriage. Since Est and Isaac are safe, let's return to Lant first, William proposed as he dusted himself. I'm worried about Eve and the townspeople that were left behind. Matthew and Leah nodded their heads because it was their sole purpose for leaving the fortress. Ian didn't have any objections and decided to come along with them back to their hometown. Although William looked healthy on the outside, his spiritual world was still far from a full recovery. In order to ensure that the red-headed boy wouldn't push himself like he usually did, Ian resolved to stay by the half-elf's side for the time being. After all, if something unexpected occurred, he was the only one that could enter William's sea of consciousness and initiate treatment when necessary. Chapter 343, The Presence of a Demigod. While riding inside the flying carriage, Matthew and Leah narrated everything that they had experienced during the war. The swarm of ants that covered both the land and the sky, and the sacrifices that were made to prevent the fort from being overrun by the invaders. William listened with a serious expression to his big brothers and big sisters' tales because he had no idea how the war between the Hellan Kingdom and the two dynasty transpired. Issei, David, and Lily didn't tell him anything about the war and prevented him from making contact with Ian, who was constantly nursing his spiritual world. He understood that the gods didn't want him to worry, so that he could train in peace. Now that his training was over, he wanted to know everything, so that he could formulate his next course of action. So, we're dealing with an unknown organization and they were in cahoots with the Crown Prince and the Second Prince. William frowned as he digested the information taken from his relatives and the two prisoners that he had brought along for questioning. I never liked the Crown Prince, Ian commented from the side. The young master doesn't like him either. William nodded his head as he glanced at the two tied-up men that were looking at him with anxious faces. You said the name of your leader is Connor, right? William asked. Yes. What is the name of your organization? DS. The two men answered simultaneously because they were afraid that if they didn't answer right away, William would kill them, just as he did to their superior, Lewis. What can you tell me about him? William wanted to know more about the main culprit behind the continental spell that had turned everyone into crystal statues. If he could find a way to reverse the curse, he would be able to seek the help of the adults in dealing with this organization that went by the name DS. The leader, I don't know anything about him. Right. He just gives us orders. We're just grunts, so we didn't get to interact with him much. What does he look like? William pressed on with his questions. Tell me his age, race, or anything that would help me identify him. The two men glanced at each other before lowering their heads. Both of their lips were quivering as if they were fighting an internal battle. William noticed this and immediately changed his line of questioning. He was familiar with this condition because he had encountered a similar situation when he was traveling with Ezio. Forget my earlier question, just listen to me first. William narrowed his eyes as he observed the body language of his two captives. Nod if the answer is yes, and shake your head if the answer is no. Understood. The two men nodded in understanding. Is your leader human? The two men hesitated, but didn't nod, or shake their heads to answer William's question. Does he always wear a mask? The two men nodded this time. Can you tell me the location for the headquarters of your organization? The two men shook their heads. Do you know the goal of this leader of yours named Connor? The two men shook their heads once again. William noticed that both of them were perspiring so much and a subtle magical pulse was starting to radiate from their bodies. The half-elf finally understood that the oath they had made rendered them incapable of answering certain questions. He knew that if he continued his inquiries, the two men would probably suffer a backlash and die in front of him. The interrogation came to an abrupt halt, and no more words were spoken inside the carriage. Matthew and Leah slept because they were exhausted from their escape from their pursuers. As for the two men, William knocked them unconscious to prevent them from doing anything unsatisfactory. A few hours later, the familiar scenery of Lant appeared in their eyes. William's face immediately became serious when he noticed some craters and deep cracks in the ground as they neared his hometown. A single glance was enough to tell him that an incredible battle had taken place, while he was away. Dave, fly higher. We will first check the situation from the sky. Don't land until I tell you to do so, William ordered Dave using telepathy. This was an ability that he could freely use with the people that were part of his King's Legion. He hurriedly woke up Matthew and Leah to tell them about the current situation. Just like William, the two's expressions immediately became serious as they saw the destruction that had taken place near their hometown. With his keen vision, William noticed something golden in the distance. It didn't take him long to see that it was none other than Luffy, the golden ape that guarded his hometown. AUDIBLE was currently lying on the ground and seemed to be unconscious. Not far from Luffy, several wyverns were also lying on the ground, as if they were in deep sleep. The flying carriage circled Lant from the skies as William and the others observed the surroundings. It was at that moment when they saw something fly from Lant and head in their direction. A loud piercing cry reverberated in the air as Blitz, John's trusted animal companion, greeted William and his entourage. The hawk shrank in size and flew beside the carriage. Blitz shrieked once again and William nodded in understanding. Let's land, William ordered Dave. Head towards our family residence. Dave acknowledged William's order and maneuvered the flying carriage to descend from the sky. As they neared the hometown, they noticed that the streets were deserted, and none of the residents could be seen anywhere. As William focused his attention on the house where he grew up, he noticed 3 figures standing near the entrance of his home. The half-elf immediately recognized his master, Celine, and the dentist of Lant, Jekyll. Both of them were standing beside each other. He was quite surprised to see that his master, and the dentist of Lant had not been affected by the continental spell. Even so, he was very relieved to see that both of them were safe. After taking control of his emotions, William then shifted his attention to the stranger that was standing a few meters away from the two. A sense of dread immediately gripped William's heart when he felt the aura that leaked out of the man's body. William was quite familiar with this aura because he had been in close proximity to one of them. Demigod, William thought as he once again glanced at Celine and Jekyll who were giving him the don't do anything reckless stare from where they stood. William nodded to tell them that he understood. An expression of relief immediately passed through the two people's faces as they nodded back at him. The black-haired stranger looked at William with an intrigued expression. There was even a hint of appreciation on the man's face as he watched the flying carriage land on the ground. When Dave jumped down from his griffin to open the carriage, the first to step out was not the half-elf, or any of the people that were by his side. It was none other than a white and fluffy Angorian goat. Ella stared at the black-haired man for a brief moment before jumping out of the carriage. She had been resting inside the Thousand Beast domain when she felt the presence of a strong entity near William. Naturally, she wouldn't allow the boy to be harmed by someone that was way out of his league. The brows of the man rose up as he stared at the harmless-looking goat that was standing beside the red-headed boy. The black-haired man had come to Lant to visit an old friend. He didn't expect that what was waiting for him was a surprise beyond his wildest imaginations. Chapter 344, One of the Four Evils. William, Ian, Jekyll, Celine, Matthew, Leah, and the black-haired middle-aged man sat inside the conference room inside the Ainsworth residence. Ella stood beside William as she observed the stranger who was also eyeing her with curiosity. Jekyll cleared his throat in order to catch everyone's attention. Let's all start with an introduction, Jekyll said as he looked at William and the rest who had just arrived in Lant. This is my father Vladimir. You can just call him Lord Vlad or just Vlad. He is your grandfather's best friend. Matthew and William frowned as they glanced at Vladimir who was still looking at Ella with great interest. Their grandfather, James, liked to boast and tell stories about his adventures. However, he didn't mention, not even once, that he had a best friend that went by the name Vladimir. Jekyll's attitude towards his father was lukewarm. It had been many years since they last saw each other and the first thing they did after their reunion was brawl. Originally, Vladimir had been hibernating inside the Strathmore forest when he felt an incredible magic power descend upon the entirety of the southern continent. Although he was curious, he didn't feel any interest in investigating the cause of the disturbance. What prompted him to leave his lair was due to the sudden loss of connection between him and James. Both of them had been very close friends over the years and their relationship was a strong one. Feeling that the connection was suddenly lost, he left his territory and traveled towards James' hometown, which was Lant. When he arrived, he saw Luffy, who was standing near the gates of the town, and thought that the golden ape was one of the culprits behind James' disappearance. It didn't take him long to neutralize the AUDIBLE before the wyverns came flying towards him. Because he was in humanoid form, his demigod presence was greatly hidden. However, that didn't stop the guardians of Lant from perceiving him as a threat to their territory. After knocking the wyverns unconscious, he was about to wipe them all out when Jekyll and Celine appeared at the gates. Seeing his son, Vladimir decided to put off killing the AUDIBLE and wyverns until he knew more about the current situation. However, before he could even say anything, Jekyll had transformed into his true form and engaged him in battle. Vladimir thought that it was the perfect opportunity to beat the crap out of his son, whom he hadn't seen for years, to see if he had grown stronger. The result of the battle was Jekyll's complete defeat. Although Jekyll was strong, he was still far from stepping into the ranks of a demigod. After beating Jekyll to a pulp, he then started to interrogate his son to know the current situation. Jekyll even showed his father James' statue that he had stored inside his stomach for safekeeping. Vladimir pondered for a while before finally making a decision. For the time being, he would stay in Lant to protect James' hometown while he was out of commission. As a demigod, He had also tried to undo the curse, but it was far too complex for him to resolve with his limited arcane knowledge. An awkward silence descended inside the room because Vlad didn't pay any attention to William, Matthew, and Leah. Seeing that his father had no intention in talking to William or Matthew, Jekyll decided to ask them what they had seen outside of Lant. Matthew glanced at William first before narrating the battle at Ravenlord Citadel. He also explained how Diaz tried to capture Leah and him due to the orders of the Crown Prince. We brought back 2 members of the organization, but they seem to be under an oath, William commented after Matthew finished his tale. I was afraid that they would die if I pried any further, so I decided to bring them here to be interrogated. Jekyll nodded his head and smiled. Good job. I'll interrogate them later and get the answers that we need. How about you, William? The last time I saw you, your spiritual world had been destroyed. I thought you would be in a coma for a few months, but it seems that you've somewhat managed to recover. William grinned. I woke up a few days ago, but I'm not fully recovered. Can you fight? Jekyll asked. William nodded his head. I can. However, I can't fight for a long period of time. According to my estimate, an hour is my limit. Celine looked at William with a worried gaze, but she decided to not say anything for now. She planned to make a detailed examination of William's spiritual world later. The beautiful elf wanted to personally see the extent of the damages that her disciple received from the battle with the astral worm. After exchanging information, Celine cleared her throat to catch everyone's attention. Right now, all the adults in the southern continent have turned into crystal statues, Celine said with a serious expression. I'm not sure why the organization did this, but it shouldn't be as simple as conquering the lands and establishing an empire. There has to be a deeper meaning behind it. Although she was a member of the organization, she only received periodic reports from them. The last letter she received from Callum was a warning to remind her of what would happen if she went against them. We don't have much information, Jekyll admitted. What we gathered was that Diaz and the Crown Prince were in cahoots with each other. I wouldn't be surprised if they've made Prince Lionel their puppet emperor at this point. William closed his eyes and tried to connect to the members of his legion who were currently outside of Lant. It was at that moment when a familiar chirping answered his telepathic summons from a great distance away. Ethon, the small wren, chirped and reported everything he had seen since he parted with the boy. Due to William's unconscious state, the wren decided to continue his information gathering while his master was asleep. Ironically, the little wren was able to come in contact with Connor's group by chance, and started following them. He followed them when they went south because his instincts were telling him that they were up to no good. After a few days of spying on them, Ethon was able to witness how Connor used the Oathkeeper key to open the domain and explore it. The wren had pondered for a long time if he should follow them inside the domain or not. In the end, he decided to stay put and just observe them from afar. He was afraid that if he entered the domain, his connection with his master would be cut off and Connor and his subordinates might discover him. Thank you, William thanked the enthusiastic bird through his connection. Don't do anything dangerous and just stay where you are. I'll be there shortly. Ethon chirped to say that he understood. Due to the distance between them, William wasn't able to keep the connection for a long time. However, he still managed to pinpoint Ethon's current location with the help of the system. After talking to his little reporter, William shared the information that he had compiled with the help of the system. It seems that the Undying Lands have finally been discovered. Vladimir, who had kept his silence since the beginning of the meeting, finally made his presence known. Jekyll's father chuckled as if remembering something sinister. He then gazed at William and eyed him with scrutiny before shifting his attention to Jekyll. I will stay here in Lant and guard this place, Vladimir declared. Leave James and the rest of the statues under my care. I'll keep them safe. You and that boy investigate what is happening in this kingdom and find a way to undo the curse. Okay, Jekyll replied. Although he didn't get along with his father, he felt at ease knowing that he would be staying in Lant as its protector. This would allow him to scout the Hellan kingdom and get a better grasp of the current situation. William stared at Vladimir and subtly used his appraisal skill on him. After ascending his shepherd class to its next stage, a few features of the system had been unlocked, and one of them was the strengthening of the appraisal skill. Qian Qi. Lord of Chimeras. Demigod. One of the 4 evils. Nightmare Behemoth. Threat level, Calamity, high. Cannot be added to the herd. Chapter 345, tempted to give a good spanking. Wivyu. Eve clung to Matthew as she cried her heart out. Ever since Mordred and Anna had turned into statues, it was Celine who personally took care of the youngest member of the Ainsworth family. The children and teenagers of Lant, who weren't affected by the continental spell, were currently in the underground shelter. It was a shelter that James and the other veterans of Lant had secretly built after the incident of the beast tide that happened many years ago. In order to prevent the worst-case scenario, they decided to make a safe place to hide the women, children, and the old people during emergencies. Now that Vladimir had taken the role as Lant's protector, Celine and Jekyll decided that it was safe for the children to return to their homes. This action turned the ghost town version of Lant into a lively one. After assuring them that their parents were in no immediate danger, the children of Lant worked hand in hand with Matthew to make a detailed plan on how they would establish roles for each and every one of them. Living in the countryside, the children were very much self-sufficient because they would often go out to fish, hunt, and forage with their parents. The problem that Matthew currently faced was the other 2 towns that were part of their territory. Fuchsia and Zinner had long been added to their lands, and it was his duty as the temporary viscount of the land to see that they were well taken care of. This was a massive undertaking that Matthew had to face, but he was confident that he would be able to come up with something. After all, his wife, Leah, was by his side and she was very good at managing territories, just like him. After Eve stopped crying, she then turned to William and asked to be carried on Ella's back. William happily agreed to the request of his cute niece and patrolled with her, while she rode on Ella's back. After a short talk with Jekyll, he and William decided to leave Lant the next day in order to investigate the southern regions where the leader of Diaz currently was. After dinner, William and Ian went to Celine's house so that his master could inspect the damage in his spiritual world. While this was happening, two figures appeared on the eastern side of Lant where a small grove was located. "Who are you?" Vladimir asked. "I've lived on this continent for many years and, yet, I have never heard of someone like you. Did you perhaps come from the central continent?" A fluffy white Angorian goat looked at Vladimir with a calm expression. "I was born here in Lant and raised by your best friend," Ella replied using telepathy. "It was only recently that I discovered that I was the incarnation of a goddess." Ella looked in the direction of the Ainsworth residence as if reminiscing beautiful memories. "However, my current vessel is not strong enough to house my true form. It's quite unfortunate that I don't remember any of the times I was able to transform into my deity form due to the limitations that bind me." Vladimir rubbed his chin because this was the first time he had heard of such things. This was his first time seeing the incarnation of a goddess in the thousands of years that he had lived. "Then why don't you change your vessel?" Vladimir inquired. "If you like, I can help you snatch a vessel that would be strong enough to house your divine soul. Perhaps, one of the holy maidens in the central continent would be a perfect match for you." Ella shook her head firmly. Although her current body had limitations, it wasn't to the extent that she found it uncomfortable. After all, if she hadn't met William in her current form, she might not have awakened her past memories due to David's intervention. "Keep this a secret," Ella said. "I intend to stay by William's side for as long as possible." Vladimir raised his brow as he asked another question. "What is that boy to you? What is your relationship to him?" One of the four evils was curious about what kind of relationship Ella had with the half-elf, who was also the grandson of his best friend. He wanted to know why an entity such as Ella would choose to remain by his side. "William is the most important person in this world to me," Ella gave Vladimir a sidelong glance before walking away. "I hope that you and him will get along in the future." The Angorian goat increased her pace as she ran towards Celine's house. Vladimir looked at her retreating back while deep in thought. He had been sleeping for many years and was currently wondering what he would do now that he was awake. For the time being, he decided that he would safeguard James' hometown. As to what he would do after this incident was over, this was something he could figure out while waiting for James' curse to be lifted. "How are you even still alive?" Celine asked after looking at William's broken spiritual world. William smiled as he held the hand of the beautiful mermaid that was beside him. "It's because of Ash. If not for her, I'd probably be dead by now, Master." William took off his upper clothes and showed Celine the gem embedded in his chest. He knew that Celine only wanted the best for him, so he decided to tell her the truth. This was why Ash was also present in his spiritual world. He wanted to formally introduce one of his future wives to his master, Celine. The dark sorceress curiously eyed the gem and even touched it using her finger. After seeing Ash's true form, the elf managed to connect the dots and lightly pinched William's ears. "Very good, little disciple." Celine teased as she pulled on William's ears. "You snagged yourself a lover in your dying state. I'm quite impressed with how you managed to pull that off." Celine shook her head as she let go of William's ears before inspecting the gem once again. "If I'm not mistaken, the heart of a mermaid allows you to gather spirit power inside your body," Celine commented. "Do you have access to spiritual power now?" William nodded his head in affirmation. "Also, if I remember correctly, the act of giving a mermaid's heart to someone is akin to making that person their life partner," Celine said as she glanced at Ash who stood beside William. "Does this mean that you chose him as your significant other?" "Yes," Ash replied. "He said that he's going to take responsibility." Celine eyed the beautiful mermaid before shifting her attention back to William's collapsed spiritual world. "How long will it take for him to fully recover?" Celine inquired. Ash lowered her head as she made an estimation. "According to my estimate, it would take at least 4 to 5 months for him to fully recover. Right now, he will be able to fight for an hour if he is alone and up to 3 hours when I merge with him. Fighting beyond that time limit would put a great strain on his sea of consciousness which might lead to its complete collapse." Celine nodded. She had made the same assessment after checking her surroundings. "Make sure that you keep a close eye on him," Celine said after a few minutes of silence. "My disciple is dumb. He needs someone with a good head to take the reins. Not only is he dumb, he's also a womanizer." Ash joined Celine in bad-mouthing the boy by her side. "I'm worried about the future. The way things are going, he will be adding more girls into his harem." William raised his head to look at the broken sky above him. He was curious if he could fly high enough to enter that giant gaping hole inside his sea of consciousness. Perhaps, by doing so, he would be saved from being forced to hear the discussion of the two beautiful ladies who were bad-mouthing him. Deep inside he was very tempted to give both of them a good spanking. Of course, he only thought of this in his head and didn't actually dare to spank the two ladies. He vowed that, when he became older, he would let them know who the boss was, and punish them severely when. Chapter 346, No one is allowed to leave alive. When morning came, the flying carriage left Lant and headed towards the southern regions of the Helan Kingdom. William, Jekyll, Ian, and Dave traveled for 3 days before arriving on the outskirts of the hidden valley where the Ren, Ethon, was currently located. They didn't know how many members of Diaz were stationed inside the valley, so they decided to be more sneaky in their approach. "Let's rest for now," William proposed as he looked at the sun in the sky. It was currently around noon, and it was still a few hours away from sunset. We will infiltrate the hidden valley in the evening. Dave, you will be here on standby when we start our operation. Yes, sir, Dave replied. The group ate lunch using the rations they had gotten from Lant before resting inside the carriage. The Griffin, Lionheart, was given the role of lookout, while everyone slept. Has there been any progress in finding a path that leads to the floating island? Connor asked. No, my lord, one of the black-robed men answered. This domain is quite big. Based on our initial estimate, it is at least a quarter of the size of the Helan Kingdom. It would take a few weeks with the current manpower we have to fully map it. Connor nodded his head in understanding. After opening the domain, he had sent some of his trusted subordinates to bring over 100 members of DS to map the surroundings. The main reason they were finding it hard to maneuver the terrain was due to the restriction on any form of flight. Because of this, they had no choice but to do things the hard way and travel the domain by land. Should I bring more men here? Connor thought. Right now, they had a shortage of manpower because the members of DS were scattered throughout the different kingdoms in the southern continent to seize control of its people. Unfortunately, forces from the Creedarian Empire and an elven force had arrived, which forced these agents to flee for their lives. Sadly, not all of them were lucky and over half of them were captured. The elves didn't kill the members of the organization, but they made sure to lock up any of them that had come back, to try and infiltrate the capital of the Zealand dynasty, for interrogation. The Creedarian Empire, on the other hand, was brutal in their approach. They didn't bat an eye in killing the members of the organization who couldn't give them the information they wanted. Of the 1,000 members that had taken control of the Kingdom of Frisia, less than half remained. They were the lucky ones that were assigned to ambush Princess Sidonie on her journey back to her kingdom. After the members of the organization escaped Frisia, they gathered their remaining forces and made a beeline towards the Anisha dynasty. The members that were stationed in the Anisha dynasty were able to secure it for themselves, because the survivors offered very little resistance. Right now, at least 5,000 members of the organization were currently stationed in the Anisha dynasty and 20,000 stationed in the different parts of the Helan kingdom. The Creedarian army, led by Jason, numbered 50,000. The Elven army, on the other hand, only numbered 20,000. However, they couldn't be underestimated. All of these elves were superior to humans in terms of rank, and their fighting prowess couldn't be looked down upon. Unlike humans, elves had a slower reproduction rate. This was why very few had left the Silver Moon continent to travel in human lands. They were always in danger of being caught by slave traders and sold as slaves. Elves had always been sought out for their beauty, and one could even say that there was not a single elf whose beauty was below average. After pondering his options, Connor decided to temporarily return to the capital of Gladiolus to see the current situation. He tasked his subordinates with continuing to explore the domain and write down the locations of the various precious resources that could be gathered within this unexplored frontier. The Hidden Valley was home to many ferocious beasts. This was why it was chosen as the hiding place of the domain that was called the Undying Lands by the first king of the Helan kingdom. However, the mighty roars of the beasts couldn't be heard anywhere. It was as if they had all gone into hiding. In the darkness, two figures traversed the valley with nimble feet. Jekyll took the vanguard, while William ran behind him. The half-elf was carrying Ian in his arms, because the brown-haired boy wasn't able to keep up with Jekyll's pace. At first, Ian proposed that he just merge with William, but the latter opposed it. The two of them could only perform Familia over Soul for 3 hours. William didn't want to waste that precious time traveling the Hidden Valley. Although he was confident in his fighting ability, he could only fight for a limited period of time due to the destruction of his spiritual world. 3 hours might be a long time, but William was used to fighting inside the Goblin Crypt, which lasted for half a day or more. The only saving grace was that he could call upon his King's Legion to fight for him when he was only dealing with small fries. Chirp. Chirp. I miss you too, Ethon. William grinned as he rubbed the head of the chatty wren with his finger. Tell me, have there been any changes? Chirp. Oh. Their leader left. Chirp. Interesting. William rubbed his chin as he thought of a plan to infiltrate the hidden domain. According to Ethon, the leader of the organization left alongside a dozen of his subordinates. He didn't know where they were going because William had tasked him to monitor the entrance of the domain at all times. There are only 2 guards at the entrance. Jekyll sneered. It seems that they lack the manpower to secure this location. We came at a good time. William nodded in agreement. Since we don't know what is in store for us when we enter the gate, I say we just knock out these 2 and interrogate them first, William proposed. It wouldn't hurt to know more about our enemy before we barge inside their den. You're learning, little Will. I have good teachers. It's a shame that you didn't choose me back then. I would have taught you a lot. Jekyll teased. William wasn't able to stop himself from shuddering after hearing Jekyll's words. He didn't regret choosing his maestro, Fayrite, to become his teacher while he was still struggling to return to a normal life. The half-elf had a feeling that if he had chosen Jekyll back then, he might be living a life quite a bit different from the lifestyle that he had right now. Let's just knock the guards unconscious first. William stepped forward and disappeared from where he stood. Jekyll gave a soundless chuckle, as he too disappeared, leaving Ian behind with Ethon. A few seconds later, the 2 pitiful guards were subdued and underwent Jekyll's hellish interrogation. For the first time, William was able to witness how devilish the dentist's method was in getting the answers he needed. It was at that moment when he made a vow to himself to not get on Jekyll's bad side. The consequences were something he couldn't afford to experience. After getting the information they needed, Jekyll made sure to dispose of the 2 guards without leaving any evidence behind. Only after the deed was done did William fetch Ian from their hiding place. It was now time to enter the hidden domain. Their agreed-upon battle plan was really simple. No one from Dias was allowed to leave the Undying Lands alive. Chapter 347, The Undying Lands. Who are you POPRG? Stop. Intredga. Jekyll and William didn't allow any of the members of Dias to call for reinforcements after entering the portal. Although the 2 guards that they interrogated told them that they had less than 100 people inside the hidden domain, they still didn't trust their words completely. The spiritual power in this D domain is unbelievable, Ian said after scanning his surroundings. Clearly, this place has been left undisturbed for centuries. Jekyll nodded in agreement. This is a treasure trove waiting to be plundered. I can now understand why these people were covered in their actions. Ethon, who was perched on top of William's shoulder, chirped with pride. It was due to his contribution that they were able to discover this hidden domain that had been kept secret since the Hellan Kingdom was founded. William's gaze focused on the floating island in the sky. For some reason, he felt that something on the island was calling out to him. Suddenly, the dagger that had been entrusted to him by King Noah flew out of his storage ring. It hovered in front of William and pulsed with a red light. Back then, when he tried to use his appraisal skill to identify the dagger, he wasn't able to gain any information about it. However, after upgrading his main job class, certain functions of Gavin's divinity had been upgraded as well. William grabbed the floating dagger and immediately used his appraisal skill on it. Relic of the Oathkeeper. Relic from the era of the gods. In order to find the secrets to immortality, the first king of the Hellan Kingdom poured the kingdom's resources into developing this hidden domain. The first king was a very powerful archmage that specialized in dark magic, and also a cautious person. After discovering a lost relic from the era of the gods, he decided to put a restriction on the domain in order to prevent any form of flight. This was to ensure that no one would be able to step foot in the fortress where an ancient power was imprisoned. Only the holder of the relic of the Oathkeeper would be exempt from the restriction and be able to gain access to the flying fortress that was called Avalon. Is this just a coincidence? William thought as he stared at the dagger in his hands. When King Noah gave him the sheathed dagger for safekeeping, he thought that it was just something that the king had done on a whim. However, this was far from the truth. King Noah had known that the princes were acting weird since they reached out to him to talk about the Oathkeeper key. What Prince Lionel and Prince Rufus didn't know was that there were actually 2 keys that were handed down to each king of the Hellan Kingdom. One was the Oathkeeper key. The other, the relic of the Oathkeeper. The Oathkeeper's key was merely a replica to enter the hidden domain. The relic of the Oathkeeper, on the other hand, not only served as a key to open the domain but also an important relic to provide access to the flying fortress, Avalon. Between the 2, the relic of the Oathkeeper was the most important one, and King Noah understood that he had to entrust it to someone that he could trust. Even though he didn't know where the hidden domain was located, he believed that as long as William held the relic, no one would be able to take advantage of the domain that had been passed down the line of the royal family from one generation to the next. Naturally, the king has another reason why he did this. During the marriage ceremony of Matthew and Leah, the king's most trusted advisor had gone to Lant as the king's representative. He was wearing a special artifact that hid his real appearance, so no one was able to identify him during the event. He was also the one that had witnessed William's strange behavior and secretly followed him. Although he was not 100% certain that it was William who had manipulated the lightning storm, his intuition told him that this was the case. After reporting this incident to King Noah, he and his advisor decided to keep this secret to themselves, until the time that William decided to expose this secret on his own. Because of this, the ruler of the Hellan Kingdom felt that the ancient relic would be safe in William's hands, because those who could wield the power of lightning were also secretly referred to by the royal families in the world of Hestia as the bane of all evil. Interesting, Jekyll muttered as he walked towards William to examine the dagger in his hand. The runes inscribed in this dagger are very ancient. Even someone as knowledgeable as me can't decipher the meaning behind it. William returned the dagger inside his storage ring and glanced at the floating island in the sky. Now was not the time to quench his curiosity. It was more important that they get rid of all the agents of Dias that were currently exploring the domain. They were also worried that Connor would return with more reinforcements. If that happened, even though the 3 of them were strong, they would still have a hard time dealing with all of them at the same time. Let's hunt the members of Dias first, William said. After that, we need to find a way to seal this domain or move it to a different location. We can't allow Dias to secure the Undying Lands no matter what. Jekyll smirked because William was just like James when it came to treasure. The old man had a favorite phrase whenever he looted bandit camps. It's no crime to steal from a thief. However, when Jekyll asked James why he ransacked the treasury of the Hellan Royal Academy, the old coot said a very funny thing. I didn't steal from the treasury of the Royal Academy. I stole the treasure that the organization had stolen from the Royal Academy. It is no crime to steal from a thief. Jekyll was quite certain that William had the exact same mindset as well. However, he didn't mind it one bit. After all, the half-elf and him were on the same side. After that short episode, William summoned the beasts from the Thousand Beast domain. They didn't have much time, so he decided to do a full sweep of the domain using all the manpower at his disposal. Psoglov almost drooled when he sensed the dense spiritual power density in the air. He then looked at his business partner with a wide grin on his face. Ever since he had started to accompany the boy in his adventures, he always made a killing, whether it be monster meat, beast cores, and even resources that couldn't be found in the forest where he resided. Because of this, he decided to have a talk with the boy and negotiate a new contract where he would play a more active role. Naturally, this would also give him more rewards as well. Kronos, Aslan, as well as the other Angorian war ibexes were also summoned to join the cleaning operation. It had been a very long time since they had gone into action and they were itching to test their strength against strong opponents. The Blood Eagle was perched on top of William's shoulder. Since there is a flight restriction, it couldn't be of much help aside from sensing the locations of the humans in the domain. The Ingrati birds, on the other hand, was forced to stay inside the Thousand Beast domain because they couldn't help it all. Besides not being able to fly, William was afraid that the Ingrati birds would start to curse out loud, alerting their enemies that there were intruders within the Undying Lands. Go in teams of 4 and search every nook and cranny of this domain, William ordered. Once you discover the enemy, engage them at once. If possible, capture them alive. If it's not possible, kill them. The beasts growled, shrieked, and screeched as they acknowledged William's order. Jekyll went alone, while William, Ian, Ethon and the Blood Eagle formed a team to search for the members of Dias. They knew that they should complete this mission as soon as possible to prevent any mishaps from taking place. Meanwhile, within the flying fortress of Avalon, an ancient being opened its eyes. It had sensed the relic of the Oathkeeper and knew that someone had intruded inside his territory. Rattling sounds echoed in the fortress as things started to rise from their slumber. Hundreds of thousands of green orbs of light burned like torches amidst the darkness. Foolish, mortals, a hoarse voice spoke from deep within the fortress. The Undying Lands belong to the undead. The only way for all of you to stay is when all of you are dead. Chapter 348, God points don't fall down from the sky. Do you feel anything weird? One of the members of Dias asked the comrade by his side. What do you mean weird? His comrade replied. I feel like we are being watched or something. Don't be too paranoid, man. There's nothing in this domain aside Froarg. What's Robois? Psoglov and his doppelganger sneak attacked the two men using the ability Shadow Punch, rendering both of them unconscious. He then used his darkness whip to bind the two of them before dragging them back to their meeting place. The same thing was happening all around the domain as William's legion swept the domain in order to capture or eliminate the members of Dias. It was quite a daunting task because the domain was quite vast. Nevertheless, William managed to capture half of the members of Dias after 2 days. These agents were not weak and the majority of them put up a good fight. There were cases when some of the members of William's legion were at a disadvantage. Fortunately they could communicate to each other via telepathy and managed to gang up on their targets. Like always, William left the interrogation to Jekyll while he and the other beasts continued their search. 6 days later, all of the members of Dias had been subdued. The great part about their operation was that they managed to get the maps that the agents had painstakingly made. For William, this was a great boon because they no longer needed to put a lot of effort in mapping the domain themselves. Also, he was pleasantly surprised when he found out that 3 days inside the Undying Lands was equivalent to a day in the real world. This lessened his worries about Connor returning anytime soon. I gathered all the information that I can get from them, Jekyll reported as he approached William who was busy reading the information that was on the maps. Did they say anything that we didn't already know? William inquired. Just a few things, and most of them are about the Hellan Kingdom falling completely into their hands. They are now focusing on bringing more men here to gather the resources for their organization. I see. William sighed. He and Jekyll knew that staying inside the domain for an extended period of time would be dangerous for them. Also, once Connor found out that there were others that had discovered the entrance to the Undying Lands, he would definitely increase the guards that would be stationed to protect it. Currently, William didn't have the manpower to deal with Dias. The members of his Night Order had all returned to their hometowns to check the current situation of their families. He knew that he couldn't count on them to help him at this point in time. There was also the issue of the floating island in the sky. William was very tempted to explore it, but time was not on his side. System, is there a way for us to move this domain? William was out of options, so he decided to ask the system for recommendations. Host, after analyzing the domain, I found out that its structure was similar to the Ring of Conquest. The monument outside this domain served as the vessel, which is similar to the ring on your hand. As long as we can move it then we can take this domain with us. However, there is just one big problem. And that is, the monument is connected to the entire Hidden Valley. In order to take away the monument, we have to take the entire valley as well. William rubbed his face with both hands. He knew that things weren't going to be so simple, but the reality still made his head hurt. Is there anything that we can do? William didn't want to give up. Even just sealing the entrance to prevent others from coming in will suffice. The monument was made from the era of the gods. It has very powerful runes inscribed on it. Sealing it is not an option. The only choice we have is to take the entire domain as a whole. And how do we do that? William asked. We will need 1 million god points in order to merge the Undying Lands with the Thousand Beast domain. William looked at his pitiful god points and felt his heart ache. Currently, he only had 2,980 god points. It was near impossible for him to do what the system was trying to achieve. Just where are we going to get 1 million god points? William looked at the sky in resignation. God points just don't fall down from the sky. While William was feeling depressed, a series of notification sounds emerged from his status page. The system alerted the red-headed boy that he received several pieces of mail from the God Shop. Mail 1. Sender, no loli no life. Subject, God points loan. Hello, this is the cutest Lolita. Congratulations, you have been chosen among the many candidates to have a loan from the cutest loli in the multiverse. Attached in this mail is 200,000 God points. This loan is payable within 10 years with 0% interest. If the loan is not paid within 10 years, you will have no choice but to sign a contract with this cute Lolita the next time you kick the bucket. Mail 2. Sender, Simp King. Subject, God Points Loan. Hello, this is the Simp King. Congratulations, you have been chosen among the many candidates to have a loan from the most suave man in the multiverse. Attached in this mail is 200,000 God Points. This loan is payable within 10 years with 0% interest. If the loan is not paid within 10 years, you will be forced to marry 100 ladies in a span of 1 year. If you don't want to die by snusnu, you'd better increase your stamina, dear comrade. Mail 3. Sender, Old Ginger is still spicy. Subject, God Points Loan. Hello, I might be old, but I'm still spicy. Congratulations, you have been chosen among the many candidates to have a loan from the most refined, elegant, and charismatic man in the multiverse. Attached in this mail is 200,000 God Points. This loan is payable within 10 years with 0% interest. PS. Aside from the God Points, there is also a wooden staff included in this mail. Make sure to give it to a little girl that has the name Eve. This is very important. She has a lot of potential and it would be a waste if she became the priestess of another god in the future. All good things must stay in the family. Mail 4. Sender, One Night Stand. Subject, God Points Loan. Hello, I need a one night stand. Attached in this mail is 200,000 God Points. This loan will be paid the next time you visit the Temple of the Gods. P.S. Don't worry, I will not tell your wives about it. Mail 5. Sender, Donger Forever. Subject, God Points Loan. Attached in this mail is 200,000 God Points. I will be sending the goods in another mail. You don't have to pay me back because I am rich. P.S. Remember your promise. Mail 6. Sender, Donger Forever. Subject, Donger. The corner of William's lips twitched as soon as he finished reading all the correspondence he had received from the god shop. He didn't expect that the god points he was lacking would literally fall from the sky. It was quite easy to know who the senders of the letter were. However, he was still surprised when he saw that One Night Stand and Donger Forever were also helping him with his dilemma. Although the contents of the letter from One Night Stand were troublesome, he thought that the goddess of lust was just teasing him. As for the last mail from Donger Forever, William didn't dare to open it. He was afraid that if touched the dangerous mail he would be unleashing a terrible calamity into his world. Better be safe than sorry, William thought as ignored that last piece of mail he had received from the god shop. Still, I didn't know that gods could loan god points. William closed his hands and pressed his hands together to offer a silent prayer to the gods who were always there to support him from the heavens. He thanked them for their love and support and promised to repay them as soon as possible. William knew that his patron god was currently recovering from the backlash he received from the battle against the astral worm. He felt sad about the fact that Gavin was injured because of him. May you recover soon, Gavin. William finished his prayer inside his heart before taking the god points from the mailbox. Since he now had the necessary amount of god points in hand, it was time to steal the domain out of the hands of the organization. Chapter 349, Unexpected Turn of Events. After getting a 1 million god point loan from several sponsors, William decided to bring the entire Hidden Valley inside his domain. Since the ancient monument was merged with the land itself, it would be impossible not to bring the valley along when he moved the entrance of the Undying Land inside his domain. When Jekyll heard William's explanation, he thought that the boy had gone crazy due to the killing. Can you repeat what you said? Jekyll asked as he looked at William in a weird manner. I will be taking this entire domain with me, William replied with a smile. I know that it sounds unbelievable, but trust me, I can make it happen. They had already exited the hidden domain and were currently standing in front of the monument that served as its entrance. Ian and Psoglov were also looking at William as if he had lost his marbles. Although they had only spent a brief time inside the Undying Lands, they understood that it was something that couldn't be taken as a whole as if it was just a cabbage from the farm. William knew that none of them would believe him, and he wasn't surprised about it one bit. Frankly, he also didn't know how the system would do it. The only thing he could do was believe that it would become a reality. Okay, so what are we going to do now? Jekyll inquired. Although he was still in doubt, he decided to trust William just this once. He also wanted to see how the red-headed boy was going to pull it off. Jekyll knew that he himself wouldn't be able to carry away the entire domain, even if he used his true form. Please bring Ian and Psoglov to where Dave is and leave the valley as soon as you can, William explained. I don't want any of you to be caught up in what is going to happen. Jekyll reluctantly nodded his head and took Ian and Psoglov with him. Ian gave William a worried glance, but the latter only smiled back and told him that everything was going to be fine. When the three had left the Hidden Valley, William focused his attention on the monument in front of him. System, I'm ready. Understood. Host, please brace yourself. Initializing domain merging. Pooling resources. First phase commencing. As soon as the system finished his announcement, the entire Hidden Valley started to shake. The beasts that were living in it roared in confusion and fear as the land they had lived in for many years suddenly suffered from an earthquake. The flying beasts immediately took to the skies, while those who roamed the land ran away in panic. All the inhabitants of the Hidden Valley started to flee in different directions. William didn't have time to worry about them because he was busy trying to keep his footing. He had already embedded the wooden staff on the ground and used it as support to prevent himself from being tossed about with the shaking of the ground. The system had told him that he should remain as close to the monument as possible in order for the transfer to work. William just didn't realize that the entire ordeal was, literally, going to be an earth-shaking experience. Ian, Jekyll, Psoglov, and Dave, who were currently flying not far from the hidden valley, saw an unbelievable sight. The valley started to break free from its surroundings and slowly rise. While this was happening, several beasts jumped off the edge of the valley, while it was still a few meters above ground. The majority of them were Class D and Class C beasts. There were even a handful of Class B beasts in the mix. They were all dumbfounded by what was happening to their old hunting ground. First phase completed. Starting the second phase. Just like what had happened back in the Kirinter Mountains, the system temporarily established a pseudo-god domain. This was the only way to forcefully merge the Thousand Beast domain and the Hidden Valley. Meanwhile inside the floating fortress in the Undying Lands. Someone is trying to bend reality, a hoarse voice said with undisguised surprise. Foolish mortal. Do you think that you can take the Undying Lands as you please? A gigantic beam of dark light shot from the fortress towards the gateway of the Undying Lands. It passed through the gate and traveled across space and time. Emergency. Emergency. A powerful wave of dark energy is about to pass through the monument. Host. Brace yourself. Just as soon as the system warned William of the incoming attack from the domain, a surge of dark energy erupted from the monument and descended on William like a tidal wave. Just before the wave was about to fall upon him, the collar on William's neck glowed brightly. At the same time, the blue gem embedded in his chest shone with a radiant blue light. A black rose tattoo, with the blue gem at its center, appeared on William's chest and forcefully swallowed the mass of dark energy at a rapid pace. Soon, a giant dark magic barrier enveloped the entire valley that was still floating in the air. The spectators watching from the outside didn't know if this was part of William's plan or not. Jekyll frowned because he had briefly sensed the presence of a very powerful being within the valley. The dentist of Lant was certain that it didn't belong to William because the presence he felt was in a realm that was well beyond the boy's current capabilities. Pseudo-demigod. Jekyll narrowed his eyes. I'm certain, it belonged to a pseudo-demigod. A pseudo-demigod was a being that had reached the peak of the myriad beast realm. They were just a step away from becoming full-fledged demigods and Jekyll was sure that the one responsible for this phenomenon was a being that was as stronger than him. However, this understanding didn't help the current situation. Jekyll didn't hesitate and made up his mind to save the boy from harm. After all, William was the one and only son of that person. A person whom Jekyll had acknowledged as the most precious companion in his life. Get as close as you can to the valley. Jekyll ordered. I'm going to save William. Dave gritted his teeth as he and Lionheart flew towards the valley that was floating in the sky. However, just before Jekyll was about to jump, the entire hidden valley disappeared right in front of their eyes. Chapter 350, Kiss my hand to show your undying loyalty. Somewhere between the god realm and reality, there floated a valley. A concentrated ball of dark energy pulsed within the cave where the monument was located. Because of the system's sudden intervention, the integration of the monument and William's own domain was forcefully put into a halt. The system didn't dare to continue the merging, while William was still unconscious and submerged in dark energy. Within that concentrated ball of darkness, a small blue light pulsed in a steady rhythm. It was steadily absorbing the dark magic at a rapid pace as if it was an impoverished person that hadn't eaten in days. Gained EXP points, 5,000. 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 Dark Wizard job class has gained a level. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Name, William von Ainsworth. Race, half-elf. Health points, 7,238/10,000. Mana, 17,500/17,500. Job class, Quick Shot Shepherd, level 13. Subclass, Dark Wizard, level 20. Strength, 55, plus 10. Agility, 50, plus 10. Vitality, 30, plus 10. Intelligence, 60, plus 10. Dexterity, 45, plus 30. Stats EXP, 122,391/438,257. Dark Wizard level 20. Job class EXP, 25,250/75,976. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Dark Wizard job class has gained a level. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Stats EXP, 173,117/438,257. Dark Wizard level 21. Job class EXP, 4,274/85,016. Just before William got hit by the dark energy, the system had switched his subclass to Dark Wizard. When this job class was equipped, William's resistance to dark magic's corruption was boosted to an unprecedented degree. Also, the Collar of Wisteria and the Spirit Core worked together to transform the dark energy into spirit energy, which helped strengthen William's body and spiritual world. With each passing hour, the concentrated ball of dark energy shrank. Gained EXP points, 5,000. Dark Wizard job class has gained a level. Stats EXP, 258,859/438,257. Dark Wizard level 22. Job class EXP, 726/94,250. An hour after the ball of dark energy disappeared, William finally opened his eyes. His body was aching all over as if he had been trampled by a herd of Angorian war ibexes. It took him a few more minutes before he could ask the system about what had transpired while he was unconscious. Congratulations, host. Your Dark Wizard job class has reached level 22. Hey. William blinked before he hurriedly opened his status page to see if the system was just teasing him. After checking his stats for the third time, a smile broke out of William's face as he silently thanked whoever was responsible for giving him a free boost in experience points. Host, please listen to me. We are currently in a dangerous situation. Right now, we are hovering between the real world and the god domain. If the host doesn't act soon, we would be unable to return to Hestia. Based on my calculations, we only have 15 minutes to complete the merging of the domain before we get stuck here forever. FCK. Hurry, restart the merging. William hastily ordered the system. Restarting merging of domains. Second phase commencing. William focused all of attention on the monument as he helped the system forcefully attach the hidden valley to his Thousand Beast domain. Fortunately, no other attacks came from the Undying Lands, which allowed William to complete the merging. Host, I'll open a portal through time and space to return you to your world, make sure to enter it as soon as possible. Understood. 3. 2. 1. Forceful tearing of time and space initiated. A small portal that was only a meter wide appeared in front of William. He didn't hesitate and entered it head first, because he knew that the system couldn't maintain it for a long period of time. After entering the portal, William found himself falling headfirst towards the ground. Luckily, he only fell 5 meters above ground, and was able to turn himself around somewhat, so he didn't suffer any injuries at all. However, before he could even assess his surroundings, he felt a sharp blade against his neck. Don't move. A familiar voice ordered him from behind. He didn't need to turn his head to know who the owner of the voice was. Priscilla, are you trying to kill your drop-dead gorgeous, and super awesome Knight Commander? William asked in a teasing tone. See Commander William. Priscilla hurriedly removed the blade that was pressed against William's neck and backed away. William turned his head and looked at the black-haired beauty in surprise. Fancy meeting you here, Priscilla. William looked at his vice-commander whom he hadn't seen for a long time. It was at this moment when he realized that his current surroundings were somewhat dark and dry. Where are the other members of the Night Order? William inquired. Where are we? Priscilla looked at William with a complicated gaze. She didn't know how to answer the half-elf's inquiry because she didn't know whose side he was on. Fortunately, there was someone in the spacious underground cavern that came to her rescue. Allow me to answer that question for you, Sir William, a voice that was as smooth as silk entered William's ear from the back. William turned his head and came face to face with an angelic beauty with long reddish-brown hair. The half-elf could have sworn that he had never seen hazel eyes as beautiful as hers, that seemed to stare right through his soul. A familiar feeling took hold of his body as Princess Sidney walked towards him. Her fragrance assaulted his senses as she tenderly caressed the side of William's face, while looking straight into his eyes. Kneel, Princess Sidney ordered. From now on, you will be my knight. My personal protector that will stay with me for life. Kneel, Sir William, and kiss my hand to show your undying loyalty. In turn, I promise that I will treat you well and keep you with me until the day you draw your last breath. Princess Sidney looked at the handsome half-elf in front of her and gave him her sweetest smile. She had turned many people into her personal slaves, but he had to admit that the red-headed boy held a special place in her heart. Even Morgana had no complaints about making William their knight in shining armor. Although they wouldn't admit it, both girls felt their heart beating fast as they stared at William's light green eyes that were as clear as a polished emerald. Princess Sidney and Morgana watched as the boy, whom they liked, raised his hand and lovingly. Chapter 351, Give me your babies. Princess Sidney and Morgana watched as the boy, whom they liked, raised his hand and lovingly, pinched their nose without any warning whatsoever. Kneel? Sorry, Princess, you don't have the authority to make me kneel, William said in a teasing tone. Even if my lovers were to ask me to kneel, my knees will not bend. I am a man of character and my loyalty is hard to claim. Please, look for someone else to become your knight. This sir is not interested. William reluctantly let go of the princess' nose and the latter hurriedly took a few steps back in shock. Why you dare pinch my nose? Princess Sidney was shocked because this was the first time someone dared to act this rude towards her. Wait, that's not the problem, why aren't you kneeling? Didn't I state the reason just a moment ago? Like I said earlier, Princess, you don't have the authority to make me kneel. Impossible. How can you not obey my order? Priscilla, who was standing at the side, looked at William in disbelief. She was one of Princess Sidney's loyal retainers who had traveled to the Hellan Kingdom in order to gather information for possible candidates that would serve under the princess. William was one of the candidates that Priscilla had deemed able to match her mistress' beauty and brain. If the commander of the Angorian Knight Order became one of Princess Sidney's loyal retainers, then she would gain an overwhelming influence within the Hellan Kingdom. For a brief moment, Princess Sidney thought that her power was not working. However, Morgana assured her that it was working perfectly. Switch with me, Sidney. Let's see if that half-elf can resist my charms. Okay. Princess Sidney passed the baton to her other half, Morgana, so she could deal with this unexpected situation. The moment Morgana took control of Sidney's body, the princess aura changed. Her hazel eyes turned a golden hue as she approached William with a seductive smile. Without asking for the half-elf's permission, Morgana grabbed his hand and pressed it over her chest. I want to give birth to your babies, Morgana said as she stared at William's eyes lovingly. Give me your babies. Princess Sidonie, who was watching from inside their mindscape, covered her face in embarrassment. She didn't expect her big sister to act so shamelessly in front of William and even demand that he give her his babies. No. Princess Sidonie screamed internally as her entire face turned beet red in shame and embarrassment. How she wished that she could dig a hole within their sea of consciousness, so she could bury herself in it. William raised an eyebrow because of the princess' unexpected action. If he was still the naive boy in his past life, he would definitely try to squeeze the soft chest that was right under the palm of his hand. Unfortunately, William had not only touched, but had done more things to the adult Wendy in his dreams. Not only that, he had also been trained by the goddess of lust herself in order to resist charms and seduction. The half-elf was now a veteran who would not easily bend to a beautiful lady's seductive charms. There had been some girls who confessed to him back in the academy, but he rejected them all because he wasn't the type to take things half-heartedly. At that time, he was dealing with the issue with Carter and his feelings for Wendy had just started to bloom. However, this was the first time that someone asked him directly to give them his babies. Even though William was thick-skinned, he wasn't able to stop himself from being shocked at the princess' unexpected demand. You want my babies? William inquired. He felt like the princess was just joking, so he decided to confirm what she said just in case he misheard her. Yes. I want to give birth to 2 of your kids. A girl and a boy. We will name the girl Abby and the boy Alex, Morgana nodded. If you want more, I can give you more, but I am worried that my figure will suffer because of the childbearing. At most, I can promise you 3. How about it? Will you give me your babies? The corner of William's lips twitched. If he wasn't sure earlier, he was sure now that the lady in front of him was serious. She had even thought of the names of their children. William had to admit that the princess was someone that he couldn't take lightly. Princess Sidonie, who was inside her sea of consciousness, had already crouched down on the ground, closed her eyes, and covered her ears with her hands. She was also chanting the phrases "this is not happening," and "this isn't real" repeatedly as if trying to hypnotize herself that this was all just a dream. A few moments ago she only wanted to bury herself in a hole. Now, she wanted to slam her head against the wall to knock herself unconscious from the embarrassment. I'm sorry, Princess. William shook his head as he slowly, but firmly, pulled his hand away from her soft chest. Right now, I already have 4 lovers waiting for me. Although I can tell that you are somewhat serious about me, I don't think that I will be able to return your feelings. Morgana raised an eyebrow then shot Priscilla a glance. The latter immediately shook her head, which meant that she wasn't aware that William had other lovers. The only potential lover she knew was Wendy, who was always by William's side. What are their names? Morgana asked in a dangerous voice. She and Sidonie had always gotten what they wanted, and this was the first time that someone actually dared to refuse their advances. If Lionel and the men of the Kingdom of Phrygia were to know that their beloved princess wanted William to become her lover, they would all hack him to pieces in order to take his place. The red-headed boy could sense the subtle killing intent in the princess' words. His instincts were telling him that if he ever mentioned his lover's names, the angelic beauty in front of him would do everything in her power to erase them from the face of the earth. And here I thought that my master was the only one who was the crazy kind of crazy. William's expression became serious as he stared at the golden-eyed beauty in front of him. He could sense a pressure that was different from her physical and magical presence. She's strong, William thought. This spiritual pressure is insane. William hurriedly used his appraisal skill on the princess. After the new features of the system were unlocked, his appraisal skill was now able to reveal some information about people as well. Name, Sidonie Val Phrygia/Morgana. Age, 16. Race, human. Title, Succubus Princess. One of the 7 deadly sins that represents the sin of lust. Chapter 352, Are you going to submit or not? I see. So, you are that girl that Lady Eros told me about, William thought as he ordered the system to switch his job class to incubus. While the goddess of lust was training William to resist seduction and charm, she would often mention that her sweet and beautiful daughter was looking for her one true love. Eros even shamelessly told William that if he was looking for more lovers, he should just hook up with her darling daughters and roll around on the bed as they pleased. The power of lust was now overflowing from Morgana's body, and the spectator from the side, Priscilla, found her breathing getting ragged. She had been charmed by Princess Sidonie many years ago and had become her devoted subject. Because of this, the princess had reduced her control over her and allowed Priscilla to act with her own free will. Even so, the loyalty that was born through those years had remained in her heart. Now, she was being charmed anew. Morgana's powers were simply too strong for anyone to resist. Half a minute later, Priscilla looked at Morgana with an infatuated gaze, deprived of her ability to think and act. Why? Morgana asked. Why is my power not working on you? Because I'm too handsome and you know it, William replied with a smirk. Fortunately, her charm is still lacking in divinity right now. Earlier when Morgana tried to charm William, she was only using a fraction of her powers. Now, she was going all in, but to her surprise, the boy in front of her was still unaffected by her powers. Also, for some strange reason, she was finding him more attractive compared to when she had first switched with Princess Sidonie to take control of their body. What Morgana didn't know was that her powers and William's incubus job class were resonating with each other. William's own charm and charisma were strengthened whenever he used his incubus job class. This made Morgana, and Princess Sidonie, who had resumed her observation of the half-elf, confused and bothered. There hadn't been a time where they needed to use the full extent of their powers to charm someone. And even at their best, they were still unable to put the red-headed boy under their control. Morgana reigned in her surprise as she looked at William in a new light. As expected of the man we chose. Good. Breaking you will be worth my while. A red mist enveloped the beautiful princess. Half a minute later, she reappeared wearing a dominatrix latex suit that highlighted her curves. Right now, she was only 16 years old, so her growth was still in its final phase. Even so, her irresistible figure, coupled with the power of lust, were more than enough to bring almost any man or woman to their knees. Morgana raised her hand and a blood-red whip materialized in the air. She grabbed its handle firmly in her hands. The beautiful seductress then lashed it on the ground, leaving a meter-deep gash that made William's liver itch. I'll give her a tire 12/10, William thought as he summoned his wooden staff and took a fighting stance. The only things missing now are the rope and the candles. Should I tie her up and make her understand that this sir is not someone she can bully? The corner of Morgana's lips curled up as he eyed William from where she stood. I'll give you one last choice. Kneel and submit to me, or I'll whip you until you submit to me. William snorted, how about I whip you instead? You're not the only one who's trained with a whip. William summoned a water whip that floated in the air. Due to his connection with Ash, Ian, he was able to use her abilities as well, strengthening his control over his water magic. Morgana frowned because according to the reports she had read, William had no magic power whatsoever. She had also confirmed this when they danced together, at the banquet back at the palace of the Helan Kingdom, because she learned through experience that some of the information that her subordinates may have gathered could be wrong. The frown on her face disappeared just as fast as it had appeared. Whether William had magic powers or not was not important. The important part was that she was planning to crush him and make him submit by force. You want to whip me? Let's see if you can back it up. Morgana giggled. Tell me, Sir William. Do you know where we are? You don't need to ask. I'll tell you the answer. We are currently inside Anthielm, the nest of the myriad ant queen who is also the guardian beast of the Aenisha dynasty. It's time for you to realize that going against me is the biggest mistake of your life. Two portals appeared behind Morgana. A few seconds later, two giant golden ants that were 5 meters tall crawled out of the portal and stood beside her. After Princess Sidney had made the ant queen her beast companion, she gained the ability to summon the ant army anytime and anywhere she pleased. William narrowed his eyes as the information of the two newcomers appeared in his status screen. Golden Nightmare Ant. Ant Overlord. Threat level, SS, mid. Millennial Beast. Cannot be added to the herd. They are the personal guards of the Queen and overlords of the ant colony. They are among the few millennial beasts who specialize in both attacks and defense. Their scales are very tough and only spells of the 7th circle, and weapons made by Grandmaster blacksmiths, are able to damage it. These overlords can also use earth magic up to the 6th circle, which makes them a very formidable enemy to fight. Only full-fledged archmages and warriors can survive a battle against one of these behemoths. I'm going to be lenient and give you one last chance, Morgana said crisply. A man of your status should know when to back down. Now, tell me, are you going to submit or not? To Morgana's surprise, instead of feeling afraid, the half-elf seemed to be completely at ease. He was even assessing the two millennial ants as if they were some kind of delicacy. Thank you for being lenient, William replied with a smile. However, my answer is... A rainbow-colored anteater sprang up from behind William and raised its head in an arrogant manner. It gazed at the two golden ants as if they were mere two bugs that it could step on at any given time. The bodies of the two millennial ants suddenly shuddered. The moment the rainbow-colored anteater appeared, they felt that it was a terrifying foe that they couldn't beat no matter what. After basking in the limelight for half a minute, the Kasaganaga curled up into a ball and charged towards the nearest millennial ant. It's cute, yet imposing, voice echoed within the spacious cavern, making all the soldier ants that heard it scramble away in fear. I'm rolling. Chapter 353, The Sin of Lust. A pained shriek reverberated inside Anthielm as the golden millennial ant's body slammed against the cavern wall. The other millennial ant didn't fare any better as it too helplessly flew backwards after receiving an uppercut from the rainbow-colored wrecking ball. Morgana, who stood at the center of the two golden ants, was caught by surprise. She brandished her whip to hit the curled-up beast that she had never seen before, but the latter was quite nimble and evaded all of her attacks with ease. One could even say that Kasaganaga didn't even consider her a threat because Morgana's fighting ability was only around silver rank. This was equivalent to a grade D beast, which was far beneath the rainbow-colored anteater's rank. William had also noticed this point, so he ignored Morgana and immediately dealt with Priscilla, who was still in a daze due to the power of Morgana's charm spell. All it took was a quick and accurate jab to her lower jaw and Priscilla crumpled like a marionette that had lost its strings. Sorry, I have no other choice, William said as he kept the black-haired beauty's body from falling to the ground. Although he knew that Priscilla's loyalty belonged to the Princess of Frisia, she was still his vice-commander. Also, Priscilla hadn't done anything to harm him. For William, it didn't matter if she had been a spy and reported his information to her kingdom. He was not worried about their information gathering because no matter how much information they gathered about him, half of it would be wrong most of the time. This was especially true when it came to his abilities and fighting prowess. What are you doing? Kill that beast, now. Morgana ordered the two millennial beasts as she summoned 8 nightmare ant commanders. These were the centennial-ranked beasts that the second prince of Anisha, Prince Aziel, had summoned during his battle with William. Beat that hateful half-elf for me, but don't kill him. Morgana pointed at William with a hateful glare. She couldn't understand why the two millennial ants by her side were being helplessly toyed around with by the strange beast who seemed to be William's ally. Those were two millennial beasts, not some low-ranked monsters, but they couldn't hold a candle against a measly anteater who wasn't even in the centennial rank. Morgana couldn't believe it. She refused to accept it. Ah, these guys again, William muttered while still holding the unconscious Priscilla in his arms. He then waved his hand. A blast of cold air permeated around him. Although the ants were stronger than him, that didn't necessarily mean that he had no way of dealing with them. Icicle Realm! William shouted. A few seconds later several ice spikes jutted out from the ground, covering the entire cavern in a domain of razor-sharp ice shards. The centennial ants immediately gathered around Morgana to protect her from William's sudden attack. The half-elf knew that once he subdued Morgana, the ants would also stop attacking him. Kasaganaga, didn't anyone tell you that it's bad manners to play with your food? William yelled as he focused his attention on strengthening his icicle domain. Che! The Kasaganaga understood that now was not the time to play, so it immediately wrapped its tongue around one of the millennial ants and swallowed it whole. Morgana's face paled when she saw how the anteater had easily eaten the millennial beast as if it was just eating candy. Impossible. Morgana was in a state of denial. This is impossible. How can this be? As if to prove that what she was seeing was real, the rainbow anteater grabbed the other millennial ant with its tongue before it could burrow into the ground to escape. The golden ant shrieked in unwillingness and in fear as its entire body was swallowed whole by the rainbow-colored anteater who was only half a meter tall. The centennial ants that were protecting Sydney shuddered when the anteater's gaze fell upon them. Their instincts were telling them that no matter how much they resisted, their fate was sealed the moment the Kasaganaga appeared in front of them. Do you still want to continue? William inquired. My friend here has a very short temper. If you annoy it, it will swallow you whole. Kasaganaga glared at William, but it also understood that the boy was just bluffing. As someone that had protected humanity during the era of the gods, the anteater wouldn't attack humans unless it was for self-defense. Morgana had lost her composure after hearing that the anteater would swallow her as well. Although she was still half in doubt, she didn't want to gamble with her life. Her fighting ability was nearly non-existent. She had been too used to hiding behind the backs of her pets and hadn't considered fighting on the front lines. For the first time in their lives, Morgana and Princess Sydney questioned their own ability to take control of the lives of others. Due to her connection with the Ant Queen, she could tell that the centennial ants protecting her were struggling to keep themselves from running away in fear. The beautiful seductress glanced at the anteater that was currently drooling, as it looked at the centennial ants around her. She was afraid that if she was too stubborn and ignored William's proposal, the adorable-looking beast would swallow her along with the ants. I concede, Morgana said through gritted teeth. You won. Hearing the princess reply, William waved his hand and the icicle field disappeared completely. Princess, know that I am not our enemy, William commented as he looked at Morgana with a serious expression. I have heard what happened in Ravenlord Citadel. Although I am a citizen of the Hellan Kingdom, I do not agree with the prince's methods. Actually, I am also currently fighting the organization that is backing him. Morgana's ears perked up when she heard William's explanation. She had long wondered if William was part of the Crown Prince's faction. If he was, he might be one of the people that the prince had sent to capture her. Switch with me. The fight is over. It is now time for negotiations. Princess Sydney, who had kept quiet within their sea of consciousness, had finally decided to interfere. Morgana reluctantly agreed to Princess Sydney's suggestion and swapped consciousness with her. Just like before, William had noticed the subtle changes in the princess aura. However, he didn't say anything and simply waited for the princess to continue the conversation. How can I believe that you are not one of the members of the organization? Princess Sydney asked. How can you prove that you are not one of the Crown Prince's subordinates? William pondered for a while as he thought of a good way to prove that he wasn't working for the organization nor the Crown Prince. Although it was possible for him to easily subdue the princess, he didn't have any intention to antagonize her. Their meeting was a complete accident, and William didn't want to part with her on bad terms. Right now, he was in need of allies and Princess Sydney's ability to control the ants would prove to be very useful in the battles that were yet to come. After thinking long and hard, William decided to take a chance as he looked at the angelic beauty in front of him. Do you perhaps know of Lady Eros? William inquired. I am one of the people to whom she has given her blessing. This is why your charm doesn't work on me. Princess Sydney and Morgana flinched at the same time when they heard William speak their patron god's name. No one, not even their parents, nor their slaves, knew that the goddess they served was the goddess of lust. There were many people that had the power to charm others, so Princess Sydney's case was not extremely rare. However, one thing was certain. In the world of Hestia, only the Princess of Frisia was a member of the 7 deadly sins that represented the sin of lust. Chapter 354, Not on the Same Side. Yes. I am somewhere in the Anisha dynasty, William said via telepathy. For now, tell Jekyll that I'm fine and that he should return to Lant for the time being. I want to go where you are right now, Ash replied. I've heard that Princess Sydney is very beautiful. Knowing the kind of womanizer you are, I'm sure that you are going to cheat on us. Don't be absurd. Why would I cheat? William couldn't stop himself from grinning because he could feel Ash's jealousy. Listen, I have 3 beautiful ladies as my girlfriends. There's no need for me to cheat. A brief silence passed by before Ash's voice once again spoke inside William's mind. Have you seen her face? Ash inquired. Yes, William answered. There was no reason for him to lie in regards to Princess Sydney. Right now, the two of them had agreed to cooperate with each other in order to fight against the organization that had brought disarray upon their respective kingdoms. Who among us is more beautiful? You are more beautiful than her, of course. She doesn't even hold a candle against you. William had been personally trained by the Goddess of Lust, and part of her training sessions included the proper way to answer a girl's inquiry, especially when it came to questions that were asked due to jealousy. You answered my question too quickly, Ash argued. I knew it. I can't trust you to stay by her side. I'm coming over there with Dave. William massaged his temple with his hand. Lady Eros had also told him that girls could be unreasonable at times, and advised him to just wing it when that happened. Ash, listen very carefully. William's expression became very serious as he tried to pacify his mermaid lover who was miles away from him. The princess has a very powerful charm spell, and only I am able to resist it. I can't let you come to my side. Although the two of us are cooperating, I don't trust her completely. Are you sure you are able to resist her charms? Of course. Have more faith in your boyfriend. I'll come back to Lant as soon as I can. For now, stay there and don't contact EST and Isaac. Now that the Undying Lands have disappeared, Connor will surely raise a ruckus. We don't want him to know that we were the ones who foiled his plans. After talking for half an hour more, William ended his long-distance communication with his jealous mermaid lover. Their means of communication had only become possible due to the fact that Ash had given William half of her spirit core. This ability was further boosted due to the fact that she was also registered as William's first familia member. The two of them were able to communicate with each other as long as they were within the southern continent. William sighed as he looked at one of the most restricted places in the Anisha dynasty, the cavern where the myriad Ant Queen resided. Currently, the Ant Queen was at the corner of the cavern with her back against the wall. Not far from her was Kasaganaga, who was drooling so heavily that William had no choice but to pay extra attention to it. He was afraid that the rainbow-colored anteater would forget about their agreed-upon cooperation and eat the myriad Ant Queen due to its desire to recover its former strength. Can I eat a leg? Kasaganaga inquired. Just one leg will do. No, William shot him down in a heartbeat. You already ate 2 millennial ants. You still haven't fully digested them and you're already asking for more. It's hard to focus when the main course is right in front of you, Kasaganaga replied as its tongue playfully extended like a snake. This is pure torture for someone like me. William sighed for the umpteenth time as he politely asked Kasaganaga to return to the Thousand Beast domain to prevent the Ant Queen from accumulating unnecessary stress. Princess Sidonie was also looking back at him in a vigilant manner. The Ant Queen was her beast companion. At most, a person could only have one beast companion at a time. Princess Sidonie was currently depending on the Ant Queen to protect her from her pursuers. She couldn't allow William's gluttonous anteater to eat her main pillar of support. Okay, time to share our information with each other, but before that, I'd like to ask the Ant Queen a question, William said as he took out the onyx medallion that he acquired after defeating Prince Aziel back in the Kirinter Mountains. Tell me, how does this thing work? William inquired. If you lie to me, I'll let Kasaganaga lick you. The Ant Queen shuddered at the mere thought of having the bane of their existence lick her with its tongue. Isn't that just asking to be eaten? The onyx medallion in your hand is the relic that I gave to the royal family of the Anisha dynasty, the Ant Queen answered. Through it, you will be able to summon my children, but there is a limit as well. You can only summon 1 millennial ant, a dozen centennial ants, and 1,000 soldier ants that are between rank D and C. Can I use this as well? Only if I allowed it. Will you allow me? William asked with a smile. Yes, the Ant Queen reluctantly replied. If not for the fact that she was afraid that the anteater would appear out of nowhere to eat her, she would have already crushed William to a pulp. The onyx medallion in William's hand glowed as the Ant Queen used her authority to grant William permission to use it. With this, I'll have my own ant army as well, William thought. They were currently at war with the organization. He didn't mind using blackmail to have his way, especially when he was the one in control of the negotiation. The Ant Queen didn't mind giving William control over 1,000 ants. After all, the army under her personal command numbered in the millions. 1,000 was only a drop in the bucket, and she could always lay more eggs to create more soldiers to do her bidding. After giving William the permission to use the onyx medallion, the Ant Queen returned to her throne, which she had left earlier due to the threat that Kasaganaga posed. You said that you had ordered scouts to check the current state of all 4 kingdoms, right? William asked Princess Sidonie, who had regained her calm and was currently sitting on the Ant Queen's lap. Do you have any news from them? Princess Sidonie raised her head to look at the Ant Queen and the latter closed her eyes. As the mother of the colony, she was able to see what her subordinates could see. After several minutes passed, a frown appeared on the Ant Queen's face. It was as if she was seeing something quite unpleasant. The Anisha dynasty is currently under the control of black-robed men, the Ant Queen reported. The images I am getting match the profiles of the members of the organization that you mentioned to me before. However, it seems that they are not the only ones that are currently invading the lands of this continent. What do you mean? Princess Sidonie asked. Aside from the organization, who else is taking hold of the other kingdoms? The kingdom of Frisia is far from the east. It will at least take 2 more days before my scouts arrive in your kingdom, Princess Sidonie. However, a few of my scouts at the Zealand dynasty have already been killed, and they were not killed by humans. The Ant Queen's face contorted with rage, they were killed by elves. William's expression immediately changed when he heard the word elves. Before he left Lant, Celine had told him that there was a possibility that the elven race would also arrive in the southern continent. Naturally, she was not fully confident about her assessment, because this was only the conclusion she could come up with when the letter from her grandfather arrived. Elves? Sidonie asked half in doubt. Here in the southern continent? Are you sure? The Ant Queen nodded. I am very certain that the ones that have killed my children are elves. As long as they have only been dead for less than a day, I can still recover the memories they left behind. Do you know how many elves there are? William inquired. At least an initial estimate. The Ant Queen once again closed her eyes as if scanning the memories of her deceased scouts. Several thousands, the Ant Queen answered after a minute. The majority of them are young. If I am to make a bold conclusion, they wouldn't surpass the age of 20. This is the only reason that I can think of as to why they didn't turn into crystal statues. Also, there are also a few adults supervising them as well. I don't know how many there are, but I'll make a rough guess and say that they won't go over 20. Princess Sidonie felt that there was something more than met the eye with the appearance of the elven race. As a strategist, she would always try to understand her target's way of thinking in order to counter them. Are they doing something out of place? Princess Sidonie wondered. The Ant Queen pondered for a while as if trying to organize her thoughts. Before one of the scouts died, they were able to see a structure that was currently being built. I don't know what it is for, but I'm guessing that it holds a significant meaning to the elves. Also, I saw something quite interesting. And that is... William focused his undivided attention to the Ant Queen who was currently looking down on him with an evil smile. The organization fled from the Zealand dynasty, the Ant Queen replied. It seems that they are not on the same side. Chapter 355, Invaders from the Creator Empire. William looked up at the grey sky that was covered with thick clouds. Ever since the continental spell was unleashed, the light of the sun had not appeared again within the southern continent. Too bad, I can't increase the level of my sun-night job class, William thought as he closed his eyes. He then remembered the smug expression of the sun god, Lug, who had made things difficult for him back in the Temple of the Gods. If possible, William didn't want to see him ever again. The red-headed boy was currently lying on the highest point of the ant nest, while he arranged the information that he had gathered from the Ant Queen, as well as Princess Sidonie's own conclusion. Elves, William didn't know how to feel about these invaders that had come from distant lands. For him, elves were a complicated bunch. His mother, his master, and the dean of the academy were the only 3 elves that he knew so far. If someone were to ask him if he hated the elves, the answer would be just a little. He was forced to part with his mother because she was afraid that he would be targeted by his father's enemies. His master, on the other hand, had made sure that he learned things the hard way. As for the dean of the academy, William didn't know him well enough to give his opinion. At the very least, the two of them were not at odds with each other. However, one thing is for sure, William mused as he opened his eyes. They didn't come here for peace. They came here with the intention to invade. According to the scouts that the Ant Queen had sent to the Zealand dynasty, the elves had either imprisoned or enslaved the teenagers that tried to resist their invasion. Although the elves were clearly stronger, it doesn't change the fact that there were millions of inhabitants in each kingdom. Among them would be the prodigies that would stand out from the rest. The fastest way to eliminate all opposition would be to either capture or enslave them as soon as possible. Whoever is leading their expedition has a good head on their shoulders. William had to admit that this was the most effective method available when conquering kingdoms. Aside from the elven invasion, there was also the threat of the organization in his own kingdom. Although the elves and the organization seemed to be at odds with each other, William instinctively felt that trying to form an alliance with them was a very bad option. There was also the matter with Kasaganaga. The moment the anteater became aware that elves had arrived, he had returned to the Thousand Beast domain to fully absorb the 2 millennial ants that he had eaten a few days ago. William could tell that the deity of the sky was focusing on getting as strong as it could. It was as if the rainbow-colored anteater was setting up a flag for an imminent battle with the elves in the future. He had already been in Anthialm for 5 days. The reason he hadn't left yet was because the Ant Queen's ability to gather information was amazing, to say the least. She had employed a vast array of information-gathering ants that were no bigger than an inch long. Even at great distances, they could relay the information to the Ant Queen in real time, which saved William the trouble of sending Ethon, his little wren, to gather information from all 4 kingdoms on the continent. William was quite thankful for the fact that Princess Sidonie and him had agreed to form an alliance. Without her help, he would still be in the dark about the appearance of the elves. What should I prioritize first? William sighed as he propped himself up into a sitting position. Whatever happens to the Zealand and Anisha dynasties is none of my business. Princess Sidonie is worried about her family in the kingdom of Frisia, so I can't count on her to help me deal with the organization in my home turf. William thought of gathering the scattered members of his Night Order in order to deal with the organization. However, after getting information from Connor's subordinates, he found out that it would be very difficult to face them in a head-on battle. There's also the issue of the Crown Prince. William frowned. He still hadn't had the chance to smack Prince Lionel's face for trying to kidnap his big brother and big sister while they were returning to Lont. William had been itching to give the bastard prince a good thrashing once he got his hands on him. What are you thinking, Sir William? An angelic voice called out to the half-elf, while he was busy thinking of ways to deal with the organization. Princess Sidonie walked towards him with the veil covering her exceptional good looks, which had brought many men and women to their knees. I'm thinking about the problems I need to deal with within the Hellan kingdom, William answered honestly. How about you? Do you have any plans to go back to the kingdom of Frisia to liberate your people? Princess Sidonie didn't answer. Instead, she sat beside William and stared at the massive ant colony in front of her. I have some good news and some bad news, Sidonie said after a minute of silence. William scratched his head in a helpless manner. Great. More bad news. Go on, tell me the bad news first. Princess Sidonie turned her head to the side to look at William. Frankly, the half-elf didn't know why the princess returned to wearing her veil after he had seen the face of the beauty that could bring down a nation. What he didn't know was that Princess Sidonie didn't want to face him straight on and used the veil to hide her expression. She was still embarrassed by how Morgana had acted in front of the red-headed boy. The Princess of Frisia was afraid that William would think of her as a loose lady that would openly tell anyone that she wanted to have their babies. A new force has appeared and invaded our kingdom, Princess Sidonie reported. The good news is that they don't seem to be on hostile terms with our kingdom. The flags of Frisia can still be seen in the capital. However, right next to it, another flag flutters in the breeze. William nodded. He had already figured out that the elves weren't the only invaders to come to the southern continent. Do you recognize the flag? Does it belong to the local forces in your kingdom? William inquired. Princess Sidonie shook her head. There are no local factions within our kingdom. However, I guess you can say that I am related to them through my mother. William frowned, but didn't say anything because he knew that the princess had not finished her explanation. The flags belong to the Creator Empire, Princess Sidonie continued. My grandfather, Leonidas Agis Val Creator, is the current emperor of the Creator Empire. Chapter 356, to our successful collaboration. So, what do you plan on doing right now? William inquired. If they are not hostile, you should do your best to establish some form of communication with them. Princess Sidonie shook her head. Although they didn't seem hostile, they still imprisoned my half-brothers and sisters, who were born from my father's concubines. The one who is currently sitting on the throne of Frisia is my 10-year-old little brother, Prince Carl. Hidden behind the veil, a small smile appeared on Princess Sidonie's lips as she thought of her little brother, who would always look for her whenever there was a thunderstorm. Prince Carl was born with an average talent in magic. Even so, that didn't stop Princess Sidonie and her mother, Queen Ophelia, from pampering him. Princess Sidonie also had an older brother. He was Prince Rainier, 24 years old, and the Crown Prince of Frisia. Sadly, he had turned into a crystal statue just like the rest of those that were above the age of 20. All the members of the royal family, who had turned to stone, were placed inside one of the spacious rooms in the castle in order to protect them from getting stolen. So in short, they are only giving the bloodline of your mother preferential treatment. William nodded in understanding. Well, look at the bright side. At least, your half-brothers and sisters' conditions are still better than those who are in the Zealand dynasty. William remembered the devilish prince, Alaric Sol Zealand, who he had met in the Kirinter Mountains. His whereabouts were currently unknown. Based on the information from the ant spies, that had infiltrated the Zealand capital, the Crown Prince had fled and took the surviving members of the royal family with him. How about you, Sir William? Princess Sidonie decided to change the topic and inquire about William's future plans. What is your next course of action? I will return to the Helan Kingdom, William answered without batting an eye. I need to deal with the problems in my own home first, before dealing with the unwanted guests that have already claimed the lands of others. A few minutes of silence passed between them before Princess Sidonie spoke what was currently inside her head. I'll go with you, Sir William, Princess Sidonie said. I may not be that much of a fighter, but I can offer you my advice when necessary. Also, I can summon a legion of warrior ants to my side. This will greatly aid you in fighting against the organization. If you want, I can even help you become the new king of the Helan Kingdom. William chuckled as he gazed at the princess by his side. Your offer is very tempting, Princess. However, I have no wish for dominion. Even so, if you are willing to aid me in my quest, I'll gladly accept your offer. But, what is the catch? I'm sure that you want something else in return, right? Don't tell me that you want to have my babies as compensation. The half-elf wasn't able to stop himself from teasing Princess Sidonie. Unfortunately, her face was covered by a veil, so William couldn't see her current expression. Princess Sidonie's face reddened, but the veil on her face saved her from her embarrassment. She didn't even bother to reprimand William's teasing, because she couldn't possibly tell him that she was not the one that asked for his babies. He. You're so funny, Sidonie. Just say yes and let darling pin you down. Oh. Stop teasing me. This is all your fault, big sister. I admit that it is my fault. Now, switch with me and let me fix this problem for you. No. Sidonie rejected Morgana's offer. She was afraid that if he allowed her other half to take control, she would die of embarrassment if her bold and fiery counterpart were to do something provocative again. After regaining her composure, Princess Sidonie pretended as if she hadn't heard William's teasing and went directly to the heart of the matter. If we are going to return to the Helan Kingdom, we'd better return soon, Princess Sidonie proposed. The Ant Queen will keep me updated if there are any new developments from the Creator Empire and the elves. Let's deal with your problem first, so you can help me deal with mine. Okay. William agreed. He then stood up and offered his hand to the princess who had piqued his interest. To our successful collaboration, William said. Princess Sidonie raised her own hand and grabbed William's hand. Unlike her own hand, the shepherd's hand was rough to the touch. Even so, she held it firmly because this hand belonged to the person she had recognized as a candidate to become her prince. The only boy in the entire southern continent that was not affected by the power of her charm. Yes. To our successful collaboration, Princess Sidonie replied as she held William's hand. 2 miles away from the ant colony, a man, wearing a black robe, looked at the two teenagers using a telescope. He was none other than Callum, who wanted to find the whereabouts of Princess Sidonie. The organization had secretly placed a tracking spell on the princess flying carriage as insurance should she escape from their grasp. After following the trail for days, he had arrived in the lands of the Anisha dynasty and entered Anthium, where the guardian beast of the dynasty resided. He was quite shocked when he found out that the princess entered the Ant Queen's domain. For him, the princess' action was completely suicidal. He even wondered what Princess Sidney was thinking, doing such a crazy thing. However, Callum received another shock when he saw that the commander of the newly formed Knight Order was with the princess. According to their information, William was currently in a comatose state due to the injuries that he had received during the demon invasion. This was why he had been left behind when the students of the academy had gone to the front lines to help defend their kingdom. Callum also observed the behavior of the ant soldiers that were currently doing their duties. He noticed that none of them were paying attention to the two teenagers who were chatting happily right above their heads. Connor's right-hand man was aware that Princess Sidney had the power to charm others. However, he didn't know how powerful her charm was. Looking at the scene in front of him, Callum felt that they had greatly underestimated the princess that Crown Prince Lionel was madly in love with. I need to report this to my lord, Callum muttered as he stealthily backed away. If my hunch is correct, then she might have already charmed the Ant Queen. Although this was a ridiculous thought, Callum was unable to toss it aside. The warrior ant's current behavior was more than enough for Callum to believe his suspicion. If his hunch was correct, then the princess was now someone who now had an entire army at her disposal. Such an individual would be a prized member in the organization. However, the problem lay with the boy by her side. William von Ainsworth, Callum thought. Even though your grandfather is out of commission, you and your family are still a thorn in our side. Although he was miles away from the two teenagers, Callum could tell that the relationship between the Knight Commander and the princess was rather good. What he was afraid of was that the princess would use her newly acquired ant army to deliver a fatal blow to their organization. Chapter 357, Connor's Final Decision. Connor frowned after he arrived at the capital of Gladiolus. The first thing that was reported to him was the successful escape of the third princess of Frisia. The second thing was that their forces in the Zealand dynasty had retreated in order to escape the elves. Connor had already expected this outcome. The elves were an arrogant race. They would definitely not allow any kind of opposition to stand in their way. The problem lay in the kingdom of Frisia. He still hadn't received any news from the agents that were stationed in the faraway kingdom located in the east. Naturally, the officer in charge had been given a long-distance communication crystal. However, it had been days since the leader had last reported anything to him. This only meant one thing, and that was that something unfortunate had befallen the man he entrusted to take control of the kingdom of Frisia. After carefully weighing the current situation, Connor decided to send 300 of his trusted men back to the hidden domain. He, on the other hand, would stay in the Hellan capital to take command of the current situation. He knew that the peace here would be short-lived, since it wouldn't be long before the elves came knocking on their doors. I need to buy time until the secret of the Undying Lands has been unearthed, Connor thought as he carefully read the documents that were presented to him. It was the current list of forces that the Hellan kingdom had. The list was composed of the young knights and students of the different learning institutions around the kingdom. Naturally, Connor focused on the documents pertaining to the students of the Hellan Royal Academy. These were the most talented students of the kingdom, and all of them represented precious manpower that he could add to his ranks through bribes or coercion. Still, just where are the officers that are supposed to look after the prince? Connor thought. Just what is Callum doing? When he arrived, the first person he looked for was his right-hand man, Callum. However, his subordinates only said that the vice-commander of the organization had personally set out to find Princess Sidney's whereabouts. Right now, the number of agents that the organization had in the Hellan kingdom numbered around 20,000. Most of them were wanted criminals that hailed from the different kingdoms, clans, and hidden factions within the southern continent. They were a ragtag group with their own agendas, and their loyalty to the organization would only last as long as their needs were met. Connor understood this. In order to appease them, he planned to have them become the new retainers of the lands belonging to the Hellan kingdom. Of course, they would give face to their puppet king Lionel, because this was part of the agreement they had. Even though Connor would be unable to keep his part of the bargain to make Lionel the emperor of the southern continent, making him the king of his own kingdom was possible. Only when he was able to discover the secrets of the Undying Lands would he have enough ability to sweep away the foreign invaders and kick them off from his turf. Suddenly, one of the rings on his fingers glowed. These rings were connected to the leaders under his wing and served as their means of communication. Connor directed the ring on the wall and a projection of Callum appeared. The vice-commander gave Connor a brief bow before starting his report. My lord, I have found the whereabouts of Princess Sidney, but the current situation has surpassed our expectations, Callum reported. Although I'm not 100% certain, I believe that the princess has managed to tame the Ant Queen and make it her subordinate. Connor narrowed his eyes. He had known Callum for a long time and knew that his right-hand man didn't have the habit of talking senseless things. If Callum said that the princess might have charmed the Ant Queen, then the possibility certainly existed. Also, there is more that I needed to report, Callum continued. The Knight Commander of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign, William von Ainsworth, is with the princess. How should I proceed, my lord? William and the princess are together. Callum tapped the top of his desk as he pondered their next move. This was an unexpected situation because he thought that the half-elf was currently unconscious. After careful consideration, he looked at this trusted subordinate and asked a question. Can you capture the princess? Connor inquired. Callum shook his head. I am not confident that I will be able to snatch her from the ant warriors. Even if I succeeded, they would be able to track me down. Also, I can't outrun the Queen's millennial flying ants. Not to mention, the Knight Commander is also there. Our information regarding his abilities is non-existent. Connor thought long and hard before he gave his order. Return to the Hellan capital for now. If you are discovered, then getting away will be extremely difficult. Also, there is something that I want you to handle personally. I will tell you the details after you've arrived. Yes, my lord. Callum replied before the projection faded. Connor sat in silence as he considered negotiating with Princess Sydney and William to work for him. Currently, the princess was far from home and, if Connor offered her enough benefits, then there was a possibility for them to come to a compromise. As for William, the crown prince hates him, but he is also Celine's disciple. One wants him dead, while the other wants him alive, Connor mused. I have promised both of them that I would fulfill their wishes, but I can't touch the boy due to my agreement with Celine. The leader of the organization in the southern continent knew that he had to make a difficult choice. Support Prince Lionel or keep his promise with Celine. The prince had given him the key to the Undying Lands, while the latter had given him the means to use the miasma to weaken the forces of the Hellan kingdom. Not only that, the research for the artificial super soldiers, that had led to the birth of the gigantic trollhound, was research that Celine had started many years ago. Unfortunately, she abandoned it. This gave the organization a massive headache and they had no choice but to give the project to another scholar to continue her research. Honestly, Connor didn't want to make things difficult for William. After all, both of them were half-elves. The race that was shunned by the elven race and treated like a disgrace. Still, he was someone who looked at the bigger picture. The Undying Lands held untold possibilities. All he needed to do was send his men to explore the domain and find the secrets hidden within. I guess I'll just let the prince deal with William personally. Connor finally made his decision. As long as I don't take part in it, Celine will remain loyal to the organization. Connor knew that having Celine as an ally was way better than having her as his enemy. The blade wyvern soared in the sky as it made a detour towards the northern regions of the Hellan kingdom. Before returning to Lont, William wanted to talk to the demigod of the Kirinter Mountains, Takom, and ask for advice on how to break the spell that had turned the adults into crystal statues. The last time they met, the demigod had mentioned that the two of them could meet again when the sky falls. Although William was asleep, the narration of his big brother Matthew, and big sister Leah, conformed with the description of the demigod. When the aurora borealis descended from the heavens, it was similar to the sky falling. Did Takom know all of this beforehand? William thought. If so, why didn't he do anything about it? William was deep in thought and didn't notice that Princess Sydney and Morgana were paying close attention to his current expression. As a strategist, Princess Sydney wanted to gather more information, so that she could find William's weakness. Morgana was doing the same, but her motives were impure. Darling looks so handsome when he's thinking seriously. Maybe I should put an aphrodisiac in his food and drinks so I can attack him tonight. Princess Sydney sighed internally. She had never expected her big sister to fall head over heels for William after getting dominated by the boy in their face-off. The image of her strong and dependable other half had long disappeared and had been replaced by a girl who just kept talking about making babies with the handsome red-headed boy. Due to this, she decided to forbid Morgana from taking over her body. Princess Sydney was afraid that if Morgana really did have her way, she would definitely resort to attacking William in his sleep. What Princess Sydney wanted was to find true love, not indulge in baby-making sessions. She had already recognized William as a possible candidate to become her future lover. However, she wanted to know more about the boy. As for William's other lovers, the princess wasn't worried about them. She believed that she could overcome all competition if she decided that William would officially become her lover. As a strategist, she was confident in her ability to win her battles. The only problem was, this was her first time to be on the battlefield of love. Princess Sydney and Morgana would soon understand that the man whom they had chosen had very unusual tastes, which in turn would make both of them question their own taste in men. Chapter 358, We will be waiting for you at the peak of divinity. Will. As soon as William stepped out of the flying carriage, Ian immediately gave him a hug. Ian had been waiting for William's arrival ever since the red-headed boy told her that he would go to the northern regions to meet with the demigod of the Kirinter Mountains. The journey took 6 days because the distance from the ant colony to the northern edge of the Hellan kingdom was quite far. William had spent almost a week in the ant colony before traveling towards the northern regions. In the 12 days that they were apart, the two had kept in touch with each other. Ian was quite worried because during those 12 days, she hadn't been able to continue the recovery of William's spiritual world. Although the half-elf sea of consciousness was recovering at a decent pace, Ian still wanted to speed up the healing by being there to act as medium. Also, it is the only place where she could face William in her true form. Ian didn't want to admit it, but those moments when the two of them were alone in William's damaged world, were the moments she looked forward to the most. Did you miss me? William asked with a smile as he returned Ian's hug. Yes, Ian replied as she looked at William with a gentle gaze. Princess Sydney, who had also stepped out of the flying carriage, saw everything. Her jaw almost dropped when she saw how intimately the two boys were hugging. Morgana, who was inside Princess Sydney's mindscape, also had the same expression. This. Could it be? And no. Don't say it. Wait. This is the only explanation I can think of as to why Darling didn't bat an eye when I placed his hand delete S on my chest. So, this is the reason. It's because of him. Princess Sydney wanted to shout that it was her chest that William had touched and not Morgana's. Even so, the situation in front of her made her completely unable to retort to her panicking other half. There has to be another reason, Princess Sydney said as she tried to calm her emotions. Don't forget Wendy. Based on our investigation, she is Sir William's not-so-secret lover. We can't deny the fact that the two of them really look that way. She even kissed him during the party back at the palace. Why you rewrite? Morgana grabbed Princess Sydney's argument like it was her last lifeline. While still hugging William, Ian glanced at the veiled princess, who was looking back at William and him. Ian didn't like the fact that William had spent 12 days with the princess who was said to be an angelic beauty. Although she knew that William was not someone who picked up beautiful girls left and right, she still wasn't able to stop herself from feeling jealous. Ian rested her chin on William's shoulder and gave the princess a sweet smile. It was a smile that screamed he's mine. FCK off, B*TCH. Morgana almost spat blood from within their mindscape because her understanding of the handsome half-elf had done a complete reversal. With just a glance, she and Princess Sydney could tell that William wasn't acting. The half-elf seemed to enjoy Ian's show of affection and it made the two of them question their taste in men. Sydney. Did we make a mistake? William was unaware that Princess Sydney and her other half were questioning their standards in men. Fortunately, William was the first to pull back from the hug and introduce Ian to the princess, who suffered from culture shock. Ian, you already know Princess Sydney, William said with a smile. Princess, this is Ian. He is part of my personal night order. Ian extended his hand towards the princess and the latter subconsciously raised her hand to firmly grip the hand that was extended to her. It's a pleasure to meet you, Princess Sydney, Ian said. Likewise, Princess Sydney replied. The handshake only lasted for a brief moment, but the two stared daggers at each other. Ian could tell that the princess was somehow interested in William, so she decided to do everything in her power to prevent the two of them from getting close. She would not allow William to increase the number of his lovers while EST and Wendy were away. The three of them had agreed that they would work together to prevent other girls from clinging to William's thigh. The half-elf's thigh had already been claimed by them. Big brother. A cheerful and loud voice broke the tension in the air as an adorable loli ran towards William. When she was within range, Brianna jumped towards William's chest with outstretched arms. William hurriedly caught the little loli in order to prevent her from getting injured. He then spun her round and round, making Brianna giggle about his ability to go with the flow. I missed you, big brother, Brianna said as she looked up at William with upturned eyes. Is Ernest looking at us? I missed you too, Brianna, William replied with gentle eyes. Yes. He is now on his way here and his face reeks of jealousy. Good job. The two conspirators gave each other a wink as they continued to hug, making the youngest prince of the Helan kingdom extremely jealous. Sir William, I think it's about time that you let go of my fiancé, Prince Ernest stated. I thought that I made it clear last time that I know that what both of you are doing is just an act to make me jealous. Please, stop it. Big sister, stop bullying me. William sighed and patted Brianna's head. He just couldn't help but feel playful whenever he was around Brianna. For William, Brianna was the closest to the little sister that he never had. Whenever they were together, he just wanted to pamper her and spoil her rotten. This was different from how he treated his adorable cousin, Eve. For William, the two of them were precious. One was his family member, the other a non-blood related little sister. If possible, he wanted both of them to live carefree and happy lives, away from the struggles of war. Sorry, Ernest, Brianna knew that the little prince was really jealous and it helped her know that the latter really did care for her. Due to King Noah's indecision about whether or not he should recognize Brianna as Prince Ernest's official fiancée, the little loli always felt like she would be thrown away once her grandfather lost the position of the great chief. Brianna knew that once that happened, she would lose her political value as Prince Ernest's fiancée. Although she was bubbly and confident on the surface, deep down, Brianna was feeling insecure. This was why she liked being around William. The handsome half-elf didn't care if she was a princess or just an ordinary girl. She could feel his sincere familial feelings for her and they made her feel safe and secure by his side. Sometimes she wondered, if she had met William before she had met Prince Ernest, perhaps. Brianna sighed internally and locked those feelings in the depths of her heart. She was still young and would know the answer when she had grown up a bit more. For now, she was happy to be by Ernest's side, knowing that the young prince truly cared for her as well. Sir William, how is the capital? Prince Ernest inquired. Is His Majesty safe? Prince Ernest was aware that all the adults had turned into crystal statues because Simon, the dean of the academy, had also become a statue a few days after they arrived in the Kirinter Mountains. The great chief had received them warmly, but he, too, turned into a crystal statue when the aurora borealis descended from the sky. No adults in the northern regions were spared from the continental spell. Right now, the one taking charge of all of the tribes was none other than Brianna. In the absence of the great chief, her father, mother, and uncle, Brianna was the highest authority among the northern tribes. She was now currently the great chieftain and was doing her best to ensure that the tribes would be able to function. Fortunately, the northerners were both warriors and hunters. Just like every strong faction in the continent, the tribes didn't lack prodigies who stood out from among the rest. These prodigies were currently working hand in hand with the survivors of their own tribes to provide food and security to their people. I welcome your return to the Kirinter Mountains, a female voice said as a blue portal appeared in front of William. The oracle that served the demigod of the northern regions appeared. William was surprised because the oracle hadn't been affected by the continental spell. This made him affirm that the King of Goats had already known that this was going to happen and had sheltered his oracle in order to prevent her from being turned into a crystal statue. Lady Brianna, you are doing a fine job in leading the survivors, the oracle said with a smile. Our lord is very satisfied with your management. He told me to tell you that you have his blessings and may you continue to strive to ensure that the tribes will continue to thrive, despite the hardships that we are currently facing. Brianna bowed respectfully to the oracle with her hands pressed over her chest. My sovereign's will is my will. I will serve according to His Excellency's wishes. The oracle gave Brianna a nod of approval before returning her attention to the red-headed boy who had come all this way to meet with her master. Please come and visit the first peak in 2 days, the oracle stated. My lord is currently busy and he will see you at the promised date. The oracle turned towards the portal, but she stopped before taking a step inside it. The wind may blow, but the ice will never melt, the oracle said softly. We will be waiting for you, Sir William, at the peak of divinity. After saying those parting words, the oracle left without turning back. The blue portal disappeared and William signed in his heart. He had wanted to meet with Takam that very day, but the oracle said that the demigod was busy. I guess I will have to wait 2 days before I see him, William thought as he allowed himself to be dragged towards the lodging that was prepared for him by Ian. The two of them had been separated from each other for too long and the mermaid was dying to have a tryst with William, in a world that was meant solely for the two of them. Chapter 359, Who Dares to Get in My Way? William looked towards the east as he waited for the sun to rise. It was still dark, and the air was quite chilly, but the half-elf didn't mind it one bit. Ash had taken the initiative to show William how much she had missed him, which caught him completely by surprise. They said that absence makes the heart grow fonder, and the red-headed boy experienced firsthand how a mermaid showed her affection to her significant other. Although Ash could only transform into her true form for 3 hours a day, it was a different story in William's spiritual world. She could stay in her true form for as long as she wanted in that world where there were no barriers between the two of them. Whenever William thought back to when he and Ash first met, a smile would always appear on his face. She will probably wake up around noon, William grinned after thinking about his exhausted lover, who was still sleeping in their warm and comfortable bed. The union between souls was very different from a physical union. It was more intimate, which helped William increase his synchronization rate with Ash. Familia. First Familia member. Ashura dy Cordelia. Host is able to use Wave Rider skill. Host is able to use Water Whip skill. Host has acquired Familia over Soul skill. Increase plus 15 enhancement bonus to all stats. Strength of stats and abilities will increase, or decrease, depending on the synchronization rate between the host and his Familia member. Synchronization rate, 42%. Owen's and Lady Eros techniques are really effective, William thought as a mischievous smile appeared on his face. After coming to know the basics from Owen and training under the Goddess of Lust, William became confident in how to satisfy his lovers. Unfortunately, he was still underaged, so he couldn't do it physically. However, inside his spiritual world, the union between souls was possible. Good morning, Sir William. An angelic voice laced with surprise called out to him from behind. Good morning, Princess, William replied. You're up early. Were you not able to sleep properly? Princess Sidney shook her head as she walked towards William. I'm just not used to sleeping in a place that I've never been before. I envy Priscilla. She's still asleep in our room right now. William nodded in understanding. He had also experienced something similar when he accompanied Ezio as part of his training. After the short exchange, William once again turned to face the east, waiting for the sun to rise from the edge of the world. Princess Sidney stood a meter away from him. Her big sister, Morgana, was still resting within her mindscape. It was now a good time to ask the boy she liked the most some personal questions, while her other half was still asleep. A/N, mindscape is another term for spiritual world, and sea of consciousness. However, I will be using mindscape more when referring to Sidney's and Morgana's world. Sir William, you seem close with Sir Ian, Princess Sidney said. What is your relationship with each other? William's attention was so focused on waiting for the exact moment when the sun appeared in the east that he casually gave an answer to the princess' inquiry. Ian is my girlboy, friend. William almost bit his tongue as he forcefully stopped himself mid-sentence. The two of us are friends. Princess Sidney noticed William's sudden break in his words and decided to pry further. The two of you seemed closer than friends, Princess Sidney commented. For a moment, I thought the two of you were lovers. Ha ha ha. How can that be possible? William might have looked like he was amused with Princess Sidney's words, but deep inside he was already sweating buckets. Due to the fact that he was separated from Ash for almost 2 weeks, he had completely forgotten that he shouldn't show any kind of intimacy when the two of them were in public. You're thinking too much, Princess, William said. Princess Sidney nodded. She was still half in doubt, so she decided to ask a follow-up question. What is your relationship with Lady Wendy? She's my lover. So, you admit that she's your lover? Sidney inquired. Of course, William replied in a carefree manner. The image of the beautiful blonde beauty whom he teased when he was awake, and who beat him up in his dreams, flashed across his mind. I wish she was here. Princess Sidney felt relief and a slight pain in her chest after hearing William's words, that were filled with love and longing. Relief because she had confirmed that the boy she liked was only interested in girls, and pain because, even though Wendy was not by his side, he still thought of her. This show of affection made her feel as if something was pricking her heart, making it feel pain. She's a very lucky girl, Princess Sidney said softly. William shook his head as he faced the princess by his side. I am the lucky one, to be able to have her in my life. It was at this moment when the sun rose in the east and cast its light on the half-elf's back. Princess Sidney looked at the handsome boy whose hair was as red as flames and whose eyes were clear and bright. The light of the sun provided a golden backdrop, which made him look like he was part of a beautiful painting. Princess Sidney wasn't able to stop her wildly beating heart from skipping a beat, as her attraction to William grew in that brief moment in time. Callum, along with over 200 members of the organization, arrived at the southern regions of the Helan Kingdom, where the Hidden Valley was located. He had only rested for a day after his arrival before he set out to carry out Connor's direct command. When Callum learned that the hidden domain had finally been opened, he knew that their organization had acquired a priceless treasure. Although he was worried about Princess Sidonie's next course of action, the hidden domain was the main reason why they had prepared the continental spell. They wanted to prevent anyone in the southern continent from getting in their way. As long as they uncovered the secrets behind the Undying Lands, all of their efforts would be worth it. Are you sure this is where the Hidden Valley was located? Callum asked. He had a frown on his face as he looked at the mile-long deep pit in the ground. Why yes. Believe me, Vice Commander, one of the men that had accompanied Connor back to the capital stuttered. I swear that it is where the Hidden Valley was located. Isn't that right? The man looked at his comrade who had also been sent to guide Callum to the location of the entrance of the Undying Lands. Sir, this is indeed the place where the hidden domain is located, the man replied. However, it was not like this when we left it. It looks as if the entire valley has been gouged out of the ground. Callum sighed and took a red gem, that was as big as an adult's hand, out from his storage ring. Moments later, the image of Connor appeared in the space in front of him. Have you arrived? Connor asked. Callum nodded. We have arrived at the location, but the hidden valley is not here. What do you mean that it's not there? It is just as I mentioned, my lord. Please, take a good look for yourself. Callum rotated the gem and allowed Connor to see the actual site where the hidden domain was located. It had been 3 hours since the sunrise, so there was plenty of light to see the surroundings. Connor wasn't able to stop himself from slamming his fist on his desk in anger. The desk broke apart due to the impact, but he paid it no heed. He had toiled for many years researching the whereabouts of the hidden domain and its key. Now that he had finally accomplished his goal, the hidden domain had disappeared as if it had sprouted wings and flew away. Find it. Connor ordered. Find the monument that opens the path to the Undying Lands. Search for clues. Don't rest until you find it. Callum could hear, and feel, Connor's rage through the communication crystal and promised to conduct an extensive search to find the whereabouts of the monument. Back in the capital of Gladiolus. Damn it. Connor kicked the broken pieces of the desk away in anger. He couldn't stop the rage that was boiling inside his heart due to the disappearance of the Undying Lands. Suddenly, the door to his quarters opened and the Crown Prince of the Helan Kingdom, Lionel, walked towards him with an equally furious expression. Where is the princess? Lionel inquired in anger. I have waited for over 2 weeks and she's still not here. Are you and your men all incompetent? Shut up. Connor slapped the Crown Prince, which sent the latter slamming towards the wall of his room. You dare look down on me and my men. Connor kicked the fallen prince repeatedly to vent out his anger and frustration. If not for the fact that the subordinates of the prince had been there to accompany their master, Prince Lionel might have been kicked to death by Connor, whose wrath was at its peak. Take him away and lock him up. I don't want to see him again. Connor ordered his subordinates, who had arrived at the room to check on the commotion. They looked at the badly injured Crown Prince who was lying on the floor. They hastily obeyed their leader's order because Connor was still emitting his killing intent. This was the first time they had seen their leader in this state and it made them feel fearful. After everyone had left the room, Connor punched the wall, sending pieces of debris flying. Who? Connor roared in anger. Who dares to get in my way? Who? Connor's mad raving continued for an hour before everything turned silent. During that hour, the room where he was staying had been completely turned into ruins. Chapter 360, We Meet Again, Little Will. How is the construction of the gateway faring? Elador asked one of the officers in charge of the construction of the teleport gate that would connect to the Silver Moon continent. If all goes well, we will be able to complete its construction within 3 months, the elf, who looked like a man in his mid-50s, replied. Once the gateway becomes functional, we will be able to begin our conquest in full. Elador nodded. Elder, please make sure that no mishaps happen during that time. Of course. You can count on me. For the time being, focus on consolidating the local forces that we have gathered. They will become our cannon fodder when we march towards the neighboring kingdoms. Worry not, that was exactly my intention. The elder of the Reese clan, whom Elador also belonged to, nodded his head in satisfaction. He was quite happy with how Elador had led the elven expedition and everyone's morale was at its highest. The number of human slaves was also increasing. Due to the many years where elves were captured and treated as slaves by the humans, they had developed a deep-rooted hatred of the people whom they referred to as barbarians. Naturally, Elador allowed his subordinates to pick their favorites from among the lot and do whatever they pleased with them. Elador himself had 6 beautiful ladies whom he kept as his bed warmers. All of them had collars on their necks, which put them completely at his mercy. I will take my leave, Commander, the elder bowed respectfully. Go, Elder, Elador gave the old man a brief nod. May the goddesses of the moons shine upon us all. The old man placed his hand over his chest. May the goddesses of the moons shine upon us all. After the elder left, Elador left his room and went to the highest vantage point of the castle of the Zealand dynasty. The wind blew through his long blonde hair and his deep blue eyes stared towards the east. According to the spirit beasts that served as scouts, the Creator Empire had taken hold of the kingdom of Frisia. The distance between the Zealand dynasty and the kingdom of Frisia was far, but Elador knew that it was only a matter of time before he clashed with one of the most powerful armies in the central continent. He then gazed towards the north, where the Anisha dynasty was located. Just like the kingdom of Frisia, the Anisha dynasty was quite far from their location. Finally, the elven commander shifted his attention to the west. The closest kingdom to their territory was the Helan kingdom. After a long meeting with the elders of the different clans and his trusted officers, AUDIBLE decided to strike at the Helan kingdom first after they had successfully solidified their control over the Zealand dynasty. 3 months, AUDIBLE muttered. In 3 months, our reinforcements will pass through the gates. A smile appeared on the handsome elf's face. He was looking forward to the appearance of their clan's guardian beast in the southern continent. Soon, father, AUDIBLE thought. Soon, I will be able to realize your dream. Also, I will find that filthy half-breed and bring him back to the Silver Moon continent in chains. With him as our captive, the head of the council and the saintess will have no choice but to give in to our demands. AUDIBLE grinned. The thought of personally stepping on the head of the son of the hero of the elves, made him extremely happy. To his clan, the moment the elves had to entrust their safety into the hands of a human was the greatest shame of their lives. They had long wanted to wash away this shame and they planned to use William as a hostage in order to make the Ainarian family submit to their will. William made his way towards the first peak of the Kirinter Mountains as per his agreement with the Oracle, who came to meet him when he had arrived among the northern tribes. He didn't know why he had to wait 2 days before meeting with the demigod, Takam. However, since he was the guest in his domain, he had no choice but to obey the host's wishes. This time around, he was told to travel alone. William didn't find this request strange, because bringing people along wouldn't aid his purpose for coming. After traveling for half a day, William finally arrived at a stairway that led to a snow-covered palace that was hidden deep within the Kirinter Mountains. Standing at the very top of the stairway was the one and only Oracle of the Northern Regions, Olivia. Welcome, Sir William. Olivia greeted. The master is waiting for you. William nodded and allowed Olivia to lead the way. The two passed through the empty halls of the palace before they arrived at the gates of the throne room. This is as far as I go, Sir William, Olivia said with a smile. May your meeting with His Excellency be fruitful. After saying those words, Olivia left William behind. She still had things to do, which were also the wishes of the demigod she served. William took a few deep breaths to compose himself before he opened the gates. Just like last time, the throne room was covered in a thick white fog. The half-elf walked forward as the gates behind him closed silently. A minute later, a clearing appeared within the fog, showing a 3-meter-tall goat that sat on a throne with an amused expression on his face. We meet again, little Will, Takam said in a teasing manner. It's quite unfortunate that you were sleeping when the sky fell. It was such a majestic sight that will probably not happen again in your lifetime. It's truly a shame that you didn't get to see it. William scratched his head because he had no retort for the demigod's teasing. He was in a comatose state when the continental spell activated, so he wasn't able to even see a glimpse of this once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. Don't worry. Takam chuckled. Consider this as a small gift from me. Takam snapped his fingers. Immediately, Takam and the throne room disappeared. William found himself standing on the hill of Lant where he used to watch the sunrise. Suddenly, a loud, mocking, laughter was heard as a gigantic red skull appeared in the sky. William saw several pillars of light shoot towards the heavens. Moments later, specks of light gathered around the giant red skull. Soon, the skull stopped laughing and opened its mouth to swallow the millions of souls of those that had died on the battlefield. A minute later, a red beam of light shot towards the heavens from the red skull's forehead. As if waiting for that exact moment, a golden beam of light came from the west and collided with the red ray that came from the red skull. The two beams of different colors intertwined, forming a purple aurora borealis. William felt his hair stand on end as the purple sky descended towards the ground, bathing the land with its colors. William covered his eyes as the aurora descended upon him. Even though he knew that what he was seeing was not real, his body still unconsciously moved due to his instincts. A few moments passed before William regained his senses. He was once again inside the throne room and in the presence of the demigod that ruled the Kirinter Mountains. I told you that we would meet again when the sky fell, Takam said with a serious expression. Young man, the two of us have many things to discuss. William turned towards Takam. Your Excellency, you already know the reason why I came here, William said in a respectful manner. Can you help me undo the curse that has plagued the continent? Takam propped the side of his face using the palm of his right hand as he looked at William with amusement. The curse is unimportant, Takam replied. There's nothing you can do to lift the curse, but it is not omnipotent. At most, you will just need to wait 2 years before the curse loses its effect. By then, all of the people that have been turned into statues will once again regain their freedom. William felt relieved and disappointed at the same time after hearing the demigod's explanation. Relief because the curse had an expiration date, and disappointment because he would have to wait up to 2 years for that to happen. While William was deep in thought, Takam casually waved his hand and a table filled with tea and snacks appeared beside the boy. The half-elf unconsciously sat on the chair and stared at the demigod, waiting for him to continue. After making sure that his guest was comfortable, Takam resumed their chat. Now, I don't know how you did it, but you got more than you bargained for. Takam chuckled. Even now, I don't know if I should praise you for your boldness, or mock you for your stupidity. All I know is that you have, unknowingly, bitten off more than you can chew. William looked at the demigod with a frown because he didn't know what the demigod was hinting at. Seeing his confusion, Takam pointed at William's steaming teacup on the table. The half-elf nodded in understanding and started to drink the Lipton tea that was prepared for him by the host of the northern regions. Little Will, Takam said with a teasing smile. The reason the Undying Lands was hidden away, was not only because of the precious treasures and resources that could be found inside it. Over 1,000 years ago, the first king of the Helan kingdom discovered that domain. The history books all say that he was the one that made the domain, but if you think about it carefully, no mortal could possibly own a domain that large. William, who was listening to Takam's explanation, wanted to say that he was immortal in possession of his own domain. However, he decided to keep mum and allow the demigod to continue his explanation. It's funny how humans can twist the history of the land as they write their own history, burying the true story behind an ancient relic that belonged to an era where the gods still played an active role in this world. The half-elf munched on some biscuits while he listened. Perhaps it was due to him not having anyone to talk to aside from Olivia, his oracle, but the king of goats was quite a talkative demigod. He was very different from Vlad, who was too lazy to hold a conversation with anyone. Jekyll's father would just nod, grunt, and say most of the time when someone talked to him. It was as if he couldn't be bothered to even give a proper reply, which made William refrain from asking him questions. The floating island is not only a stronghold, it also serves as a prison, Takam continued. Imprisoned within it is an existence that is capable of bringing ruin to the continent once it breaks out of the chains that bind it. Takam once again chuckled as he eyed William in a mischievous manner. Simply put, you have acquired a priceless domain with a notorious, manslaughtering, pseudo-demigod as a freebie. Congratulations! When it breaks out of its prison, the first person it will kill will be you. William almost spat out the tea that he just drank after hearing Takam's explanation. This piece of information made William break out in cold sweat. He knew that he had acquired a priceless treasure. However, after hearing Takam's warning, he realized that it was not only a treasure trove, but also a problematic domain where a vengeful Dracolich had been locked up for thousands of years. He wasn't given much time to dwell on it as Takam continued, the next important thing you need to know is,